Hey everyone, this is Adam Ellenboss from Nightlight Astrology, and I am joined today by my friends and colleagues Alexandra and Whitney to discuss the astrology of July. We're going to be taking a look at all of the major astrological events for the month of July, and then we'll also be breaking down horoscopes for the month of July. That's going to be a separate show, and you guys probably know I do that alongside Alex and Dana. Today, what does July hold for us throughout the entire month? We're going to look at all the big transits of the month and break them down for you today. So, before we get into it, as always, remember to like and subscribe. It really helps our channel to grow when people who watch regularly take a second to give us the thumbs up or click the subscribe button so that you don't miss anything. You can find transcripts of any of our daily talks on the website, nightlightastrology.com. Two brief things to promote, and then we're off to the races. We're looking at, if you've never seen the reading offerings we have, go to Need-Based Astrology Readings to the Book of Reading tab. Scroll down, you'll see that we have tiered readings with staff, some really talented alumni. Those offer flexible price points for your readings so that way nobody's priced out of receiving them. You go to events, click on live talks, you will also see that I have really the rest of my talks for the year are now posted. The 9th house is the talk that I'll be giving on July 10th, so you can check that out. But there's going to be, in August, we're looking at the 7th house. In September, I will be looking at Mercury in an in-depth talk that will pair Mercury in combination archetypally with every other planet. We'll be talking about the 2nd house in October. We're going to be pairing the planets again with Venus and all the other planets in November. The 11th house comes in December, so a lot of really good things coming up from my monthly webinar series. If you register for any of those and you can't make it live, you will get the replay recording afterwards, so I hope to see some of you there. All right, on that note, welcome back, Alexandra and Whitney.
Hello, thank you.
Hey. This is our final time together, guys. We're really gonna miss you.
Stop. I'm in denial.
I recorded horoscopes with Alex and Dana, and I was just reflecting both before, during, and after the show with them. I was like, gosh, this was an idea in my head a year ago to use the platform to try to help promising astrologers as they're developing their content, their careers, their platforms that have come through the Nightlight schools. And I have to say, I think it's been wildly successful. You guys have been amazing to work with. It's been a joy to watch both of your... You came in with a ton of talent, but I feel like I've gotten to watch you grow in the same way that I watch myself grow every year as a content creator. So it's been cool to share that as a process together. And I see nothing, without having to look at any charts, I see nothing but good things in both of your futures as astrologers and content creators. And I'm going to tell everyone more about how to stay in touch with you guys and stuff like that. But I just wanted to leave that by saying thank you for all that you've brought to this community over the past year.
That's so sweet. Thank you so much, Adam. It's hard to put into words like what it's been like this past year. It's been such an unreal experience getting to share, learn, grow, and collaborate with someone that I so deeply admire. So it's been a really formative experience, and your generosity, not just Whitney and I, but just to like the astrological community is so noticed and appreciated.
You both, way to make me so emotional here to start up our show. I always really everything that Alexandra said. What an incredible opportunity to become a fixture in the Nightlight community. That is just full of so many amazing people. And, of course, through this time, I've grown so much as an astrologer, and thank you, Adam, for that opportunity. But, at the end of the day, it's all of these amazing relationships I've been able to create with both of you and, everyone in our community. So, just am eternally grateful. But also so excited. There's so much talent in this community, so excited to see who comes next.
And Adam, it's been so awesome. But as soon as we're done recording, it's kind of like Whitney and I are going to BFF ride on horseback into the sunset.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
I still feel like I got to see both. But Whitney's in Minneapolis, so I see Whitney somewhat regularly.
Yo, what's up,
so I
Toady?
get to see both Whitney and Alexandra at NORWAC, and then somehow forgetting to get a picture with the three of us was like one of the biggest flaws of my year. But anyway, that aside, it's been really nice to work with you guys, and also so everybody knows the goal of this platform every year now is to bring in some new co-hosts that are coming through our programs that are talented. That it's not fair. It really isn't that astrology today is really measured by the success of your content creation platform. It's almost like to be an astrologer, you need a platform, and then you get to be an astrologer. I don't like that. And also, even if people are really talented, it can take such a long time to build a platform that what I envision is doing is just giving people a little boost as they're like, here are some really talented astrologers.
Gaslighting piece of shit AI, man.
Let's just use this platform to help boost their success because they're killing it, you know? So anyway, that's the idea. There'll be new people coming in, but also in the year following, co-hosts revolving out, the same co-hosts that were in will be invited to create weekend bonus content for the next year. I've long wanted to provide some weekend bonus content because I think that it would be, I'm at full capacity Monday through Fridays, right? But Saturday and Sundays might be really fun to give the stage over to some of these talented folks who've gone through our familiar faces. So for the next year, Alexandra, Whitney, Alex, Dana will be creating some bonus content at least once a month, if not twice a month. You'll see some weekend content hitting on astrological transits and stuff like that. So you will be seeing them again in the next year through that bonus content that we create.
Yes, we can't wait. We're going to come up with some really good ideas for you guys. It's going to be fun.
It's part of what I
It really is, yeah.
We are in the process of finalizing through the co-host auditions and who will be coming in, but by the time you see your forecast for the month of August,
Go, Jonesy vibes, sorry. Pardon my language. I was just quoting Z's. I apologize. That was really, I was thinking that's not nice if there's any girls watching.
First of all,
What's up?
Maybe we reflect just a little bit on the month of June. It was a very busy month. We had the Jupiter-Saturn square, the Jupiter-Neptune square, and a wild Mars-Uranus transit that coincided with warfare.
Doing well, Jonesy. How are you?
Assassination attempts.
Thanks for being here.
Some politicians. Like it was a gnarly month of June. I think we should start by just offering any reflections.
Doing all right.
And I know we have a few grab stories as well that we're going to share.
Yeah, do you want me to jump right into draft and then
Let's do it.
Okay.
Do it that way. That sounds fun.
Perfect. So let's see. I've got a Jupiter Cancer. I have a Jupiter square Neptune, and I've got a Mars square Uranus. So should we start with Mars square Uranus? Maybe get that one.
That's not good, Jersey.
Okay, so this person says, I knew this transit was coming up and was remembering to be mindful of accidents. Well, 10 minutes before heading out on a road trip, getting my last bag out of the house, I lost my footing on uneven ground, even though I had been going in and out of the door several times that morning already, and I twisted my ankle, fell back and landed on my sacrum/tailbone, hit my head on the garage wall. It happened so suddenly, I was in shock. All of a sudden, I was on the ground and landed so hard. Thankfully, after icing for a few hours, I was still able to go on my trip. It was super intense and painful. I looked up the exact time, and it was when the moon in Scorpio was exactly opposite Uranus and Taurus at 28 degrees. How about that? Man, that Mars square Uranus, I mean, you summed it up, Pat, and that was freaking gnarly. And I also, over that period, I was also flat on my back. I was sick. Like, I don't get sick very often, and I was like, it was physically ill for 4 days.
Yeah. The Jupiter-Saturn square.
Sorry, Jersey. That's terrible. That's so terrible. Oh, really? Oh, that's not funny. That's terrible. Is he just a young guy?
Yeah.
He's in jail now?
And I happened also over this period,
I'm sorry.
I happened to read a book by a guy named David Kessler about food addiction. And it was mind-blowing. It was just so good and so interesting. It was talking a lot about the way that certain ultra-processed foods
I think you should tell the police. I don't know.
creating food addiction.
I don't know. Maybe you don't want him to stay in jail longer, but I mean, just for your own safety, you have to look after yourself.
Understand why certain environments,
I'm
certain
sorry.
places in my life, especially when you travel, provoke a lot of anxiety in me because in those environments I feel like I sort of lose control.
The fuck is this,
I feel
man?
almost like in my early 20s I went through a period of addiction, so I almost feel like I'm an addict again in certain food environments. And I've never really known why. I haven't been that consciously aware of it. And this book really made me suddenly go, oh my god, of course, there are certain addictive components in certain foods that are kind of the only
How did you meet him?
options in certain environments, especially when I travel. And no wonder
In jail?
I had this experience of battling with myself around certain food environments. That was like, for me, that was a huge breakthrough.
Dope.
Because it's like you're struggling with something, and you know this area is a struggle, but you're not yet conscious enough to really understand why.
Through Snap? Oh, I would.
That was my Jupiter square Saturn.
I think it's a sign. I think it's a sign, Jersey. I'm sorry to say.
It really was right in conversation with that
Yeah.
in a challenging way. And I think that highlights some of what like Jupiter's been doing for a lot of people. You know, I've seen this.
Yeah, it's a sign that I think you gotta move on, unfortunately.
Cancer 7th house where like
I
this was supposed to be
mean,
a great time
it doesn't
for
sound like you have a true relationship. To be honest, I mean,
crisis of self-belief or some different ways that it can.
it's like, what would you be? What are you? What is your relationship? And
The Jupiter experience beyond the square
have you ever?
Saturn and Jupiter.
Has he ever been out of jail with you?
Oh, I think so. I'm pretty sure I think so. But when we're thinking about expansion, like we rarely think about the fact that it's going to leave a stretch mark, and sometimes you can get hyperfixated on that instead of the secret abundance that we're expanding to welcome in. You know.
Yeah.
Well, should we
Yeah, what's
talk
your goal?
about a little bit more
Good question by
about Jupiter and
Dodie.
Cancer here? We've got two more graph stories that both highlight Jupiter, and I think they actually tie in very well to this conversation. So, this person says of Jupiter and Cancer, I am a Capricorn rising, so as Jupiter is bringing light to the 7th house, my spouse was diagnosed with early Alzheimer's. Yes, it sucks. However, it has brought a softness to our
Wow.
relationship. Nancy has weight 6
I
times in the last 3 months. It may be a small thing, but for me, it was wonderful. After 30
Yeah, I would,
years, I didn't realize how a weight was such an intimate gesture. We are more playful. I am appreciating today and what I want in having a partner. As we walk into this new adventure, it is so good for me to walk with Nancy. Twice this week I told friends, I'm not
Yeah, I
sure
would
what
move on
happened, but I
personally.
found a renewed
Yeah.
spark of love. And of course my 4 planets in Leo know how to shower love. Thanks, Adam. I love my
Yo,
cat.
Swirl, what's up?
That's awesome.
Oh, it's so sweet.
That's really, yeah.
That way, yeah.
Sweet and melancholy at the same time. It's that bittersweet, right? Okay, so here's a
Swirl.
Jupiter square Neptune. Hi all, I'm a regular listener of the show.
I might do a
Big fan
basketball
of
stream.
Every Night
It's a nice day out. I just wanted to do a little bit of this. Then I'll probably do a weightlifting stream or a basketball stream.
I'm a crafts person who makes custom products with a design from concept to finish. And
Ah, this game, bros. Like this fucking game.
I don't see the full financial benefit for some time. Yesterday, I had a project barely in concept.
No, Jersey, I mean, I
It's ready to
would.
go, and it paid
To be honest, I'm gonna be like, listen.
Now I have thousands of dollars, but no clarity.
You just gotta give him some closure.
Of the product.
I mean, he's still in prison, but why is he in prison?
It was like so Jupiter Neptune.
So totally. I feel like I got hit with a rash of like TikTok and Instagram posts of people who were getting hit with like tariff bills delayed from FedEx and UPS, invoicing the consumer for something that they bought on Topshop, ASOS, or whatever. And I feel like that kind of speaks to what's going on there too.
You know, it's so Jupiter Neptune. This is what came up for us.
Please.
There's a few things that came up that were like that felt relevant, but one that was like so Jupiter.
I don't think it's gonna work. I'm like drifting. Why am I drifting? Like, why?
Turning
Like, why this game, man?
announced to us that she resents the fact that we went to Disney.
King told me on work too. Yeah.
Well, she was.
But why is he in prison? I
She
mean,
doesn't remember, and her older sister.
sometimes people don't change either. I'm against. Dude, there's like.
Need to go back.
I don't judge anyone that's in prison, right? But it depends what they've done. Because I know the system
And
is
for whatever reason,
bullshit.
it sort of hit my wife.
Attempted
because
murder
this
and
was such
murder.
a strong.
Interesting.
I don't know, just the way she presented it was like she was just such an attorney.
Yeah, I would.
Aquarius.
I would definitely probably tell.
That's exactly how. So,
I think you should definitely tell someone in the police force or something. You've at least been talking to this person. I mean, I'm not saying you got to rat on anyone, but actually maybe ratting would be bad for someone like this. But I would just gonna be honest, follow your heart.
It's like it doesn't yet. And it was like, well, that's their Christmas gift. You know, that's going to be their Christmas gift, and we're going to go for just like a quick couple of days, just because Ashley like this.
But yeah, just you just gotta move on.
Yeah,
Is he talking to any other girls? He might be.
This is probably the last time.
Sounds like he is.
Cool and interesting for both girls, and they both have a memory.
I'm sorry, I'm just assuming. I don't mean that. I'm assuming out my ass. I'm assuming out my ass. I'm sorry. I might be wrong. I'm sorry.
Materialism. So I'm like, but so there. I thought it was fantastic.
But yeah,
This Magic Kingdom
I asked that because if you stop like talking with him and approaching him, if he doesn't have anyone else to like latch on to, sounds like he has like a latching on type of thing.
I mean, this is probably like seriously. I doubt it. It's going to be like 4 days or something. But I think my girls are still at that space where everything Disney is very magical. So hopefully it's
The princesses of all.
It's cute.
Take pictures so they remember this.
Oh, True Faith, what's up, man? GG Rip, yeah. In your full health, it's probably gonna be a GG Rip. What up, True Faith? I don't think the glass is gonna open.
Do you want to share it with Matt?
I think we could get into it.
Let's do it. I'm going to put the real-time clock up on the screen. Our first portion of the month of July is creatively titled Rapid Evolution, July 4th. That is this Friday. Venus will be joining Uranus. I have 2 episodes later this week that you will see devoted to breaking this down into the horoscopes and the culminating lessons of Uranus.
See that?
So there's a lot more to come this week, but let's talk about it now. It happens on July 4th. Venus conjoins Uranus, and then within 3 days, Uranus will enter Gemini, following Venus across the threshold, so to speak. And then Venus will find Pluto from Gemini to Aquarius. Let's talk about that sequence, either all together or in parts. I'll let you guys.
That was some really bad exhaust bay movement.
I mean, I'm game to jump in on Venus week. Because that's how I refer to this. This is totally.
What's up, bro? Everyone's here.
Another astrologer, and it's all going to be this week. And it is because Venus takes really center stage in that sort of hand-holding process again with Uranus across the sign boundary. And isn't it interesting how we also saw Venus doing such similar work with Saturn?
Yeah, Drenzy, I mean-
From Pisces to Aquarius. It's just so cool to see how the role.
How much man working? That's good. Thanks, dude.
Shifts this year.
Thanks, man.
But as far as
Thanks, buddy.
Venus conjoining Uranus in Taurus
I might-
and all of this, like,
I'm gonna play some basketball later.
I could not see
Nice day.
fun and maybe a little frantic sort of if you're in the U.S. for the July holiday weekend. Like, how great that Venus conjoins Uranus on her day. It's Friday. It's Venus Day, right? But if we're talking about this anaretic conjunction in Taurus, I really think what's happening here to start is that Venus is like testing us. We have integrated what we've learned from Uranus over the last 7 years that Uranus has been in Taurus. And Venus is making sure that that sort of Korean revolution feels sweet and is showing us like the height of change in that sweetness and like this is what it's all been for. So I'm seeing this quite optimistically. I mean, as we get into moving into Gemini and then Venus trying Pluto, maybe we're working a little bit with like some power plays or smooth talking sort of dynamics here. But
Oh, the double
I
duck.
love if one of you want to kind of jump in on where we are and we can kind of have that chronologically as well.
No, go ahead, Allison.
Okay, yeah, I totally agree with your idea that Venus is asking us to reconcile what Uranus has been up to in Taurus. And it's kind of underscored by some transits that are happening next year that I wanted to point out. Because next year in April, it's on April 23rd, but Uranus, because of its retrograde, will be back at 29 Taurus, and Venus will conjoin again at 29 Taurus a year from now, in 10 months. And at that time, there is actually a Mars-Saturn conjunction in Aries that same week, and a new moon in Taurus. So it's almost like what's happening right now is a kind request. It's a very sweet, kind, gentle, loving request for you to take action in pieces of Taurus. You know you have uprooted and sort of like churned with Uranus there. It feels like next April, no longer a request. It's a little bit of a demand by the time April next year comes around. And it kind of had me thinking
It's okay, Jonesy. I mean, we can't
now,
dwell
of course,
on the
my
past and
house
past
will
decisions.
the creative process. But it just made me think about this process.
1K even giving him money too?
You're so comfortable in the process of creating. Of course,
Oh,
there's like
wow.
discomfort and vulnerability involved in making anything, but it's really
Yeah,
like
you know,
a
relationships, they cost
form
money.
of making
It's okay.
and being
Hey, if you're in a
creative.
relationship,
Whereas
I
there comes a
pay way
time
more than
in
1K.
anyone's life where
Let me tell
might
you.
have to show that work to somebody else. You might have to show
And I
it
love
to
to. I'm
friends.
happy to.
You
But
might
I
want to
understand,
show a
right? That's not that
partner.
much.
Or you might even get to the point where
But,
you're like, hey, I want to exhibit some of this, I want to put it out into the world. And that can feel so scary and so
If he's threatening you,
like
you should
really
definitely
really threaten you
notify.
in ways that you don't expect to be threatened, right? Some of that
I mean, you don't want to
like,
get, you don't want to be
I
like
didn't
getting him in
expect
trouble, like
that piece of
ratting
me
on
to
him, but
be
you need to
rooted
protect
about
yourself.
putting it out in the world. It can bring up all kinds of stuff. So I kind of feel like that's what's going on here. You spent years and years with this Taurus part, having all of these unexpected experiences and pieces of awareness
Aw,
coming
what's
through.
going
And now it's
on?
the time to actually go and exhibit your art, put it out into the world. And it might feel a little bit scary, but it's at this point still a gentle request. So I think if you can find the agency to do it now, it might be easier.
I love that. Yeah, one of the things that comes up for me in this is the revolution, if we think about Uranus just in terms of that move from the familiar to, whether it's experimentation or it's eliminating things that feel stuck, that revolutionary impulse has been in a Venus-ruled territory of the zodiac for 7 years. So in many ways, this is like one of a few final marks that Venus, the presiding goddess of this temple, has to say or is contributing to that revolution. I think that one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is this dance between form and function, which Earth can, Uranus and an Earth sign, Taurus, can bring meaningful changes to the form and function of things that are material and physical. The fact that there's this culminating shift, and then both planets go into an air sign. And then later in the year, we have... And it
looks fast.
Pluto,
Yeah, it's not.
early days of July. And then Uranus retrogrades back into Taurus later in the year. I wonder if there isn't a meaningful, like a question of how to change the form or function of something. How to change the physical nature of something that isn't about to go even deeper, because it's going to gather a whole bunch of new ideas and then bring them back in one last process. Does that kind of see where we're going?
Totally. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I see exactly where you're going with that. And to me, as you're speaking, I am getting the picture of the archetypal Prometheus, which is so much related to Uranus, right? In fact, like, yeah, I've been reading Cosmos and Psyche, and finally making it through that tome, right? And
We're pacing. We're pacing.
that's in the beginning.
We are pacing.
So I'm blazing through. But Thomas says something really smart and interesting in one of these earlier chapters, in that because
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is, you know, just slowly end the relationship, but don't like, you know, drop him and then he'll have like some sort of like resentment against you. You gotta try to explain that you want to move on. But I mean, gotta make sure that he lessons are yeah.
Speaking of the change of form and function.
And just some people, like,
I think that's one of Adam's favorite soapboxes, by the way.
some people might never change.
That's what he says.
A lot of times people never change. Most of the time.
But I was thinking of like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So, like, that can't be, the null hypothesis can't be that someone will change. It has to be that they won't change.
And I expect these two
That's my opinion.
conjunctions at the analytic degree in the next 10 months to kind of maybe bring some of that out into the public eye. Specifically interested in, like you said, Adam, this dance as we move into the unbridled tinkering inventor insanity of Uranus into Gemini, which I'm just thrilled for. But, you know, going there, getting some ideas, coming back and saying, oh, I can make it physical. And also I think we've seen a resurgence that will be really strong, made stronger by Jupiter and Cancer, of people saying like,
No, Jonesy, I think you have your hand in your heart right now. No, you have your heart in your hand right now. Like you're running around with your heart in your hand, looking for someone to give it to. And that's not good for you. It's not good for them. That's not good for...
And so you have
mainly you and him. Mainly you. You know?
I wonder if there might be some new...
You gotta keep your heart in your body, in your chest, in your center, in your soul.
Practically change the form or function of something.
And then people will come to you.
I can't help but think of the fact that we
You
have...
will attract
It's pretty small, but it's
people that like you because you're going to be you. You're going to be centered. This is where your heart is, where your thoughts are. It's going to be you, and people are going to like you.
That to me speaks to some, like...
And then you can, I mean, I'm not saying you choose, but I mean, you can at least say, like, this person isn't right for me. I don't know. He might be gorgeous. He might be stunningly gorgeous. I don't know.
Through the seventh, the conjunction, Uranus into Gemini alone. Anything else you guys want to say about just the emergence of this new archetypal dynamic before we move on?
I'm just like excited to think about.
You also got to make sure you don't have some sort of psychosis to wanting to help people in need, right? And just to be a little self-aware. I'm not saying that you have that, but you just gotta be self-aware that you don't have that.
Sort of like advancing the latest
Putting
scientific theories about this.
your heart into it.
And talking about how
Ratatouille.
consciousness is like an innate property of the universe and what that means for the sense of self, which is pretty interesting.
It was a weird premise, man.
Pluto trine situation. I feel like
It was a really weird premise of a movie. It was okay. It was cute. It was whatever. I'm a big Finding Nemo fan. I like Finding Nemo. Not gonna lie, sick movie.
I'm really excited about it.
Oh, I love that.
But I mean, like that was like 20 years ago too.
We are on the precipice of something groundbreaking, certainly. And
I saw Finding Nemo in theaters.
It
was amazing. It came out on like a summer day, a hot summer day. It was amazing. Such a nice experience.
Yeah, it's AI, but is it more than that, technological, media-wise? Like, there's something with Gemini, especially this early part.
Leaving the theater with, I think Sinatra, Somewhere Beyond the Sea. I think it's Sinatra.
Like, it feels very social to me. Like, what is going on? Is it social media?
Finding Dory was a trip.
There's some sort of
Finding Dory was amazing. That was a trip. I was not expecting that. Nemo's still better though.
Blasting open these social boundaries for better or for worse, and hopefully they're better. But I'm kind of going in that direction too. Like, it's the progress, you know?
Love that. Yeah, I think one of the things that I've been an aspect of. I just gave a talk.
Rebooting a mouse.
I just gave a talk on Uranus trine Pluto. It was called The New Objects.
Yo, Toad, have you seen the Warner Brothers introducing? It's gonna be such a random fucking thing. In Florida, they have. They had like Super Mario and Luigi come out, and they had these characters, Donkey Kong, and they were just literally just walking out.
And so
guys like Super Mario, why don't you just get an acrobatic, like one single acrobatic to do the job, and just do just a freaking even a cartwheel. Just literally just walked out. It was ridiculous. It really upset me.
If I'm in the midst of a really
And then it was like all these unemployed men sitting at home. I do a cartwheel for a job.
I am typically so in the space of the idea.
I was really disappointed.
And the turning of concepts and words.
It was really shit.
It's really fun. And I think of Gemini like that. It's like fun exchange. Typically what happens for me, because I have Mercury in Cancer, I have Mars in Gemini, right? The exchange is the Mars and Gemini. About 3 hours later, the emotional consequences
That's too much, man.
of everything I talked about, well, I'll start actually feeling it. And it's taken me years to realize that there's a connection between what I talked about 3 hours ago and what I feel 3 hours later. This is, in a very simple way, air condensing into rain falling down to Earth. So the thing is that I think this is why in the 1940s, two advancements that happened that are so air into water. The conversation of post-traumatic stress in war weapons, where here's these things that happen, and there was dissociation, and there was trauma, and then here's these almost like delayed emotional behavioral response patterns that are reflective of the trauma that become embodied. That, you know, it's like the body keeps the score. If you guys remember that book came out a little while ago.
Yeah.
So it's like there's always a connection between what's circulating in the air and the eventual embodiment of an instinctual And I'm thinking about that a lot. The other thing that happened in the 40s that's super fascinating.
What?
Was
Like, really?
basically, that was one of the decades that's widely recognized as the decade within which the legitimatization of clinical psychology started taking place in academia. This is a credible science. It's not just pseudoscience. This is credible academic. You can study to become this, well, and there we have the psychology, there's an ology, there's a logos in it, but it's about human behavior. So I think there's actually a super hidden, because also the air signs are human signs. There's some way in which air is so connected to water that we don't necessarily think about it that way. I've been exploring a lot of these elemental connections because sometimes a strong elemental disposition will actually also immediately connect in the way that it shows up to an element that is paired with it, like water in this case. So anyway, I've been playing with it.
That is so freaking profound. I definitely just learned something.
It's fun, right?
It's so cool.
Totally. It reminds me also of this book. I didn't really know why I pulled it out, but obviously I pulled it out to recommend it right here. But I don't know this author, but I picked this up at Norwalk, Procession of the Night Theater by J.M. Hamadi. And it's basically like it takes several different astrological heritages and their systems of talking about where the moon
this is
goes
it.
in a month, and it combines them into one really elegant, very mercurial book. And it starts with this 28-day story of a wanderer, like making a pilgrimage that's 28 days long. And it's just so incredibly moving. I'm not done with it, and I probably won't be for years. It's one of those books that you really can revisit time and again. But I feel like it's kind of what you're saying, like that mercurial wandering in the air piece, and then also this very lunar and sort of like watery, lovely thing going on. It's a cool book.
Maybe I'm picking up on the fact that this whole first intro of Uranus and Gemini is happening with Jupiter's in Cancer. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Come on,
Okay,
man.
well, let's move on to the full moon period. Full moon period we're talking about starts with the full moon in Capricorn on the 10th. Get a kind of classic Capricorn Cancer conversation.
Come on, what is
Going
nonsense?
on. And then just a couple of days later, host of that full moon, Saturn, is turning retrograde. And then not long after, on the 17th, Mercury turns retrograde. And then prior to the new moon, is kind of just constellating all around a week or so after the full moon. Venus will also square Mars. We're looking at this in order here. To start with the full moon in Capricorn, anything that comes to your guys' mind right away?
I just love how boring this film is. It's so boring. Thinking about last year when we had two full moons in Capricorn, one was at the energetic degree, we had Pluto come back, I think it was spooky Saturn for summer. I remember us talking about that. And Adam was like, yeah, keep astrology goth. And I'm just like, yeah, let's just have a chill. I'll take a bath. I'll put a crystal in the window and charge it. It's so simple. It's so straightforward.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's really interesting because obviously this lumination is happening in Saturn's domicile, and it comes just days before Saturn stations retrograde. In fact, the moon clears Capricorn and then Saturn stations. So there's a way in which
Good.
this
Congratulations,
almost
Rimsey.
feels
That's a
like
smart
bit
choice.
of a trigger point that we're looking at. And
Yeah.
I love this sort of boring aspect, but of course, Alexander, you will find this boring as well. Resident Capricorn over here.
I just can't tell you how many clients of Capricorns that,
Yeah.
particularly Capricorn, but then there's also Adam knows that there's a Libra Saturn piece of the generation, where it's just it's been a really
a good plan.
It's been really hard since
Just go for a
even before
walk,
COVID, but
get some
particularly,
fresh
when
air.
Pluto got to those degrees of Capricorn, and then we had the
Especially if it's hot in your
astrology
apartment.
that coincided with the pandemic,
Go for a
because
nice
it was so nasty,
walk.
and, it's been really hard for Capricorn people, and I just see them day after day in my chair, in my client sessions, and I'm like, it
Oh,
does
fuck
get
this
better.
stupid
This is
fucking
normal.
game.
I'm like, yeah, see, look, we don't have anything crazy going on. It's just a
With the
little
dog,
cute
sure. Very nice
situation,
dog.
and
It's always a
here we
nice
go.
experience.
particular moon.
It's a good idea, Jonesy.
I'm thinking about this in context, right, as well. The last lunation we'll have had was our moon in Cancer. That is so big, so Jupiterian, right? So much of this belief-driven new birth, right? And so then, of course, here we are on the other side of the polarity and the axis, and now, like, those dreams were confronted with the real world circumstances, right? And it's that sort of like
Nugget
real world
fighting
reality that might be like
boy Nugget.
a little bit boring, but also just like a weight to bear. You know what I mean? Like
Why is Nugget
did
sick?
all of this growth
Something wrong with
work
Nugget?
if you were paying attention for the new moon in Cancer, right? And so like
Hope
we're
not.
ready, we're galvanized, we're like gonna get to work, and then this Capricorn full moon was like, yes, and it's the real world, so bring your expectations down, kind of get ready to work for those dreams, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I was thinking, I just gave this little meditation at the summer solstice event that we did on Cancer, and I was talking about how, Cancer is like the close proximity of the child with the source. I feel like Cancer is like God as mother, like that's that, or God as mother, or something like that. Another way of saying that is just gods, right? Like, but as the one, not because I think most of the time we think of the one as masculine, and many, and the embodied role as feminine. I think there's also a way of thinking about that oneness that is almost like the womb, right? It's like the oneness of the divine feminine. And the close proximity of a child to its mother is like Cancer. Like, stay close to the source of nurturance, connection, comfort, safety, nurturance, devotion, but it's connectedness to a source, not like emerging with it, but connectedness. But it's like a form of yin oneness or something. And then what happens is the child grows and it goes off into the world and it gradually separates from its mother. And watching my wife go through this with her two little girls as they're getting older, and I'm like, it's not uncommon, like at least one day or two during the week that my wife will just cry because of something that's just bittersweet to see. It's just cute and it's sad and it's wonderful and it's all the things. And as I feel like that's the solar year from Cancer, the sun's going down into the earth. We get a little bit more, like, farther away from the mother as source. We spread out and we have to go into the valley of life. And I feel, as someone who was born with the Cancer sun and Capricorn moon, by the time you get to Capricorn, there's this sense of having to return. It's like, yep, I got into the world and what I found was amazing, and there's a bit of a mess. And so I have to somehow get back home. We don't think about Capricorn as getting home. But if you think about it as start commencing the journey that takes us back to Cancer, and you orient from that space, then Capricorn can be like, how do I get back home? I've somehow gotten lost in the world, and I want to get back to my mom. I want to get back to the womb of creation. I feel like the full moon in Capricorn can be that awareness that grows within us that says, somehow I got a little bit lost from the sweetest, most essential things. As a result, I have to swallow a bitter pill, realizing where I am compared to where I came from, and I've got to start the arduous path of getting back. But if that's being oriented through Jupiter in Cancer, through the Sun in Cancer, it's almost like rather than having to climb up a mountain in the dark and just forge, it's almost like there's a beacon at the top of the mountain. It's like a mom beacon, a womb beacon. It's like, here, come home, just come home. It's going to be easier from this point forward because you've got Jupiter in Cancer as like this homing beacon that's maybe helping that process out a little bit more. At any time in my life,
Please, that's such nonsense, dude. Yo, that's like, fuck you, man.
It has typically been like, dude, you got lost in addiction. How do you get back home to sweetness? dude, you got lost in the work. How do you get back home to connection with your family or your kids? You know, dude, you got lost in principles and ideas. How do you get back to your heart? It's always something.
Fact, I don't crash out.
Isn't just about
Sure has to make a decision.
It's like
Thanks, Jonesy. That's sweet of you.
How do I get back to that source?
It's so beautiful, Adam. It's
I'm
like
trying to
really
copy your
eloquent,
zombies
lovely
skills. You guys should
of
seriously.
this process. I think it's
Jonesy's
if people are
a
listening,
serious
they want to do that work for themselves.
Call of
I just
Duty
want you to know, like,
zombies
you
or whatever
can
it
go back
is.
and look at the last full moon in Capricorn, or you can trace what's happening at this full moon in Capricorn back to the
Oh,
new moon
did he?
in Capricorn
Apparently,
that happened
he has the
during
same.
season,
Apparently, the
and, like,
prosecutors
play around
dropped a
with
bunch
this. It's
of
gonna be especially fun
charges.
to do.
Apparently, he has the same prosecutors in like the Ghislaine Maxwell trial or some shit, or some other trial.
Like the moon is in Capricorn, not so happy.
Come on, man. What the fuck?
Her detriment, looking across the way at this, like, you know, this
I feel like that game's so serious. Well, the shows are insane. You get insane kills.
The moon is like, you know, lonely outside of the cold, looking in the window a little bit here, but you can.
Shout out Jersey Vibes. She streams too.
Yeah. Again, like, I've been reflecting on this. By the way, today Jupiter is on my Mercury in Cancer, which is opposed to my Capricorn moon. So I've been really contemplating this.
I think he's gonna be maybe convicted of some stuff, Toad, but
naturally coming to my mind.
seems like maybe not.
Well, you have a nice little Kazumi action on top of your Mercury too, so I think this little podcast is blessed today.
Oh,
You know,
really?
it is wild, but like I haven't. The most,
What is
like,
that? I'm gonna guess
subjective level
insulin.
that I would describe
Insulin pricing.
Jupiter is meaning the Sun Jupiter conjunct
Is that it?
exactly Mercury, like almost down on the minute.
No.
Has been, and I feel so optimistic today. It's like an unusual. It's like someone gave me Kool-Aid sprinkled with optimism.
Crazy swirl.
For sure, Jupiter on the moon. I'm feeling all kinds of crazy stuff. But, yeah.
Don't you realize that's been in my cup this whole time?
Yes, I know.
We need to.
For real.
In midwinter, we need to carry.
Easy there, Hammurabi.
Adam and I started like sharpening our sights in the winter, and we're like, no, put it away, we don't need that.
I would go back to telling you guys that when I
$14 billion.
I looked at
Wow.
your auditions when they came in, I was like, these two.
It's crazy.
My yin and my yang. This is going to be the sweetest mix of personalities and qualities. And it, like, without your bubbly optimism, Whitney, this would not have been. We so.
We'd be just live streaming 90 minutes, like.
324.
Oh my god. Okay, so Saturn is retrograde July.
And Neptune, just to note that Neptune also stations retrograde in July, but it happens around July 14th. So just know that they're both retrograde.
They're both retrograde at this point. You want to say something about that, Alexandra? I don't have much to say about that one.
You know, I don't have much to say about it. I don't think it's totally relevant for like a personal astrological thing, but it's important if you're tracking that, you know, now both planets are headed back towards Pisces, and in late Pisces, they're going to form a series of grand water trines and like a grand air trine kite thing over the next few months. So if you're tracking the way that things are unfolding, this is maybe a little bit of like a energetic change back into those last houses of Pisces.
What the fuck was
It's
that?
phasal dynamic shifting. It always happens, I've explained this on the channel before, when the sun gets close to the trine, you'll see the direction of the superior planets, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn change course, so get the retrograde. And that upcoming trine that happens, you know, around the 24th, we're going to get to that later, it would not be surprising for us to see that the trine coincides with like more of a, if you're looking for the evidence of Saturn turning retrograde, I would look for the trine, is what I'm trying to say.
Crazy,
The
bro.
trine is almost always when I start to notice, oh, here's the revision, or here's the reworking, or here's the delay, or here's the turn from the slow-moving planet. I start to, oh, that's what this has been about. That's what shifted directions. I always pick that up under the trine myself. Okay, well, let's go on to Mercury's retrograde in Leo. We're seeing that station turn retrograde on the 17th. I have it on the 18th here just so solar file will pick up the little S. But this is a turn of direction for Mercury in a fixed fire sign. It's taking place in the bound of Saturn, who's just turned retrograde in a fire sign. It's kind of feels like a very fiery dynamic. It's nice that Mercury is, at the time that it turns retrograde, Venus in Mercury's sign is creating a sextile with Mercury. To me, that suggests that the outset of this retrograde could have a little bit of benefic fortification around it, so it's not totally chaotic and wild. Almost like, I don't know, let's say your air conditioner breaks down, but Venus is there and it manages to get a fix that's affordable. Maybe it takes a day, but we don't have to replace the air conditioner. I'm making that up off the top of my head, and I'm going to knock on wood just in case I fight that into my own house. But what do you? I mean, that's my thought about Venus sort of being in the midst. But otherwise, what comes to your mind?
Yeah, I like Venus in the midst of this. I mean, similar to how you didn't have a whole lot to say about Saturn retrograde, I don't have a whole lot to say about Mercury retrograde. I mean, this is our second of 3 Mercury retrograde this year. I think it's really interesting as we're looking at this, wheel, and we're seeing that this is happening in the bound of Saturn, and obviously Saturn is also retrograde, but still in Aries, where Mercury had the original retrograde moment earlier this year. And like, does this always, maybe this is a thing that always happens, I haven't been practicing long enough, are like all of the Mercury retrogrades this year are happening in fire signs, or at least being initiated in fire signs, which I think obviously feels really prominent and potent. Does that always happen? Are they always trying each other in that way, elementally?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most interesting parts of like when you find yourself in a Mercury perfection year, because Mercury moves so fast. It's like, what does it mean that Mercury is my time lord? I'm always sending people to the retrogrades because it's lighting up that trigon, and also it's this disruption of business as usual. So if you're in a Mercury year, you're looking at the fire signs this year. But yeah, that does.
May I just add here that yes, I am in a Mercury perfection here, Alexandra, and this Mercury retrograde is stationing atop my ascendant. So
I'm trying to remember. It has been forever since I've taught this. How often do they change through the triplicities? Is it every 3 years, 2 years? I'm trying to remember. Do you recall, Alexander?
No, I actually don't know offhand.
Well,
maybe that would be
I'll put it in a comment on this video.
yeah, I feel like we should figure that out. I believe that it's something like every 10 or 12 years. I want to say 12. That Mercury will be returning via retrograde to your natal position. That feels like, I feel like I remember that. But anyway, it's been a minute. The point is that the retrogrades do occur in signs of the same elements and rotate through elements. You do get crossover, like we had a little bit of Aries and Pisces, if I remember correctly. So they cross over a bit, but predominantly they'll be in the same elemental signs and then switch. So this is very similar, there's a similar pattern that goes on with Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions where they change elemental triplicity families over long periods of time. The Mercury's retrogrades change quickly. I just can't remember what it is.
Not an easy question to Google, but I will pin it as a comment on this video from my YouTube account, which is won't leave here. And I wanted to say I did have one thing to say about this, which is just like, this to me strikes me as related in obvious ways through square to what's happening in Taurus, but related thematically to what I mentioned about agency and instigation and requests for change. Like Mercury stationing in a fixed sign here is another little thing. It's like, hey, just rethink what's going on. It's a disruption of business as usual. And unfortunately, our reliable fixed sign friends are often
What is this?
the most resistant to any kind of like change or disruption of business as usual. And Mercury in some ways is like a very agency-oriented trickster. And so there's a feeling that like if you can grab some of that and make a choice to throw yourself into some change somewhere, that it might be helpful. Like there are so many people who I've talked to who have been feeling really stuck, and then I say like, oh yeah, things are gonna change, and they're like, what do you mean change? And I'm like, you just said that you want to change. You didn't hear yourself say that, but I heard you say that. So Mercury, in some ways, is like a real ally in that. And you know, Mercury retrogrades get like a goofy rap in pop culture, but you know, I know professional astrologers who launch projects on Mercury retrogrades. Like it can be a great time if you use it on purpose to go back and revisit in an intentional way some of what's going on in the Leo area of their chart.
I can't help but think that this Mercury retrograde, for some of us, may tap into father. I look at the consistency of some of the symbolism of Mercury in the sun-ruled sign. Mercury, as it's outset of the retrograde in the bound of Saturn, while Saturn is in its fall, in the sun-ruled sign, or sun-exalted in Aries. The sun comes as the ruler of the Mercury retrograde into the bound of Saturn in its fall retrograde. I just wonder if there isn't sometimes like just dads, father figures, leaders, solar figures, of central authority. There's moments where they fall down, and it's like as someone who's gone through this in my life, really profound with some square Pluto, and my dad went through some epic downfalls. There's nothing more sort of difficult to watch, because it's like, I don't know, it's like watching a North Star disappear in the sky or something. If some people never even had one to be with a dad or a leader or a mentor or whatever, but if you have had one and you watch them go through, whether it's their health or it's they retire, or it's like they're getting older, the mortality is creeping in, the failure is coming in somehow. Those are really hard things to square with, because they can eat away at our sense of faith. Is there anything supporting me? Is there anything that's reliable? Is there anything that doesn't die? And is there anything that isn't subject to corruption or scandal? I could see this as being a new faith in something new or someone new coming through the retrograde process, or even forgiveness. I talked about Saturn in Aries, like the fallen solar figure who needs forgiving or needs help, needs to read something like that comes to mind.
I think you're really setting us up for this end of month period, the new moon in Leo, and I think we should take it there, but from July 12th through July 22nd, so just before we hit that new moon period, that's actually when Saturn and Neptune are at the closest they come this year to their conjunction. They're only 13 minutes apart during that range of time. 12 through 22, yeah. So it's really bringing up. It's like, to Whitney's point of that sobering quality, it really does feel like, drunk at the Jupiter Cancer welcoming party, and then you go to the bathroom and you have to make eye contact with yourself, and you're like, am I the person I've always wanted to be? And you're like, whoa, that hot's for tomorrow. Like, holy God, because it's like, the whole sense of your world might just fall apart right there. With the new moon, I think we're seeing like a real strengthening, and I don't necessarily think that's a good thing in some of the ways that we're seeing like these solar figures
I can use
growing in a power. So like, to add on to your point, if you had like a weak, in a painful relationship with a father figure, and suddenly that becomes a really strong point in your awareness, like it can feel really painful. But over the next 2 years, we have only 2 eclipses in Leo. They're total solar eclipses, both new moons in Leo. August 2026, August 2027, Jupiter comes into Leo, so there is no doubt that, especially through all of the activity in Leo, but then also the oppositional stuff from Pluto in Aquarius, like our, not just personal relationship, but like our cultural relationship to solar figures is undergoing some dramatic reorganization, at least.
Wasn't the name of the major protests that happened recently? No King.
No kings, Adam. Yes, it sure was.
And obviously, like I say that with all due respect to I know there's political diversity in our audience, but just as a matter of astrological fact, you can't make this stuff up. Like that is so Saturn in Aries, it's so Neptune in Aries, as well as other things that I think were going up. Mars Uranus that was happening that weekend has a whole history of being part of the Revolutionary War, which was sort of against a king or a monarchy. I thought that was like, wow, astrology is so real. Now, let's go forward to this last period because we are running a little bit short on time. The new moon in Leo takes place on the 24th. You can't make up the log jam. I mean, this is a very busy dynamic period within the solar year. I had this, as I'm sure you guys did, mapped out back in December when I was looking at, we gathered all the transits for the year in advance. The woman on staff has been doing it for me for years. Took a look at each month and I was like, whoa, end of July, wow. New moon in Leo, exactly opposite Pluto. So a new moon that is a Sun-Pluto opposition probably sparks changes or transfers of power within a collective, which could involve for example, there's
Tiptoe around, Adam. Tiptoe around.
Who said we could have a regime change in Iran, right? Now, like a regime change is a matter of something that's been talked about, bandying about with this, right? Well, that's something that could literally take place under a new moon like this. Whether that's here or in some other country or whatever, the point is that a new moon forms a new beginning, but opposite Pluto in Aquarius, it has that power to displace and transform structures of power in very intense ways. Could suggest such things happen. In our personal lives, I'll just say that to me, this reflects some of the classic Leo Aquarius dichotomies, like what does it mean to be a meaningful part of society or collective, and what does it mean to resist all categorization because I'm a me, not a they. I'm not a we, I'm a me. So I think collective and personal tensions, how do I fit in, how do I stand apart, the pressures to conform versus the risk of standing alone, also the risk of standing alone and the need sometimes to join with others. So I see all those tensions like very loud. Dad also potentially very loud, continuing on with the Mercury retrograde. But there's lots more to say about this one.
Yeah, I am on the same page as you are in terms of these themes of like a new kind of power, new themes of boldness, and I think this can be really productive when we look at personal astrology, right? But when we're looking collectively with everything we know is going on in the world right now, yeah, it gets real loud. And it's certainly related, just as we were alluding to before, to the Jupiter square to Saturn Neptune, because now this moon is configured in a trine to Saturn and Neptune. And so it almost feels like we're taking what we've learned over the last month of turmoil and using it to inform a new ideal of power. And read into that both collectively and personally, right? But what it looks like with Pluto opposing here, I mean, you're talking to an Aquarius, right? We're talking like power to the people kind of messaging here. And I think that dynamic is going to that Leo Aquarius dynamic of like leader versus people versus, but that tension is so prominent in this one. I think there's also, it's Leo, right? I think there's also is there a performative quality to this? Like, whether personally we feel a pressure to perform, or from a collective aspect, we're looking at sort of this like electric force in the media. It's like Showtime bringing it in technicolor that like it's just an intense period of pressure that has this performative and powerful quality to it.
Totally. I think there's this unsung material piece as well. I don't know that I have like thinking about it, but the geometry of the chart, which is that Mercury is obviously retrograding back into this new ruling Mars piece where we're going to sextile those Mercury signs. So I think that retrograde that Mercury is doing again, that rethinking, it kind of actually has me really thinking about like the new Pope, things like figureheads that are that kind of sort of figure. Almost going back stood for a long time saying, like, forget this pressure, this opinion of men in years.
I don't know why I switched guns. It probably caused a lot of lag. I probably would have passed away still, but I don't know why I switched guns.
Approval to do the thing I've always wanted to do at this time, you know?
Yeah, because the pressure of Pluto in Aquarius, opposite of can be like, well, the collective pressure says you ought to be this or you ought to do that, but the Leo pressure says I stand alone, I stand apart, I stand as one. And the most maniacal version of that is when executive control or power, is unbridled, unchecked. It just goes, it becomes dictatorial, or it becomes so overpowering that it's like, it couldn't be clearer. It's almost like sometimes, I feel like sometimes people do things, not even because they really want to, just to show you, well, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, I feel like that happens on a personal level. Like we all have those friends or people in our life who it's like the messages demanding change, especially when you're considering Pluto, can be so loud in your life, especially if you're an astrologer and you can see it, right? But a lot of times you're talking to a friend or with a person who is maybe really, really deeply situated in the, I'm not doing that just because the stars are telling me to. Or like just because my job is getting hideous and awful and unavoidably bad, I'm not changing my job. It's like there's a rooting down in that fixed way that can really happen.
I remember, I told you guys this before, but I remember when I first made the decision not to actively, regularly cover mundane astrology events, like events happening in the collective in terms of the astrologers chose to go in the direction of person. 90% of my channel is that way. We could touch on things peripherally today. And I remember there was a fair amount of people who said, oh, well, you must be, basically, well, if you're not with us and talking about these things, then you're against us. And I remember just being like, that's how you see it. I don't. I'm not, just because I'm being me doesn't mean I'm antagonizing you. It doesn't, I don't want to.
It's a fucking game.
And suddenly, for me to exist in your psyche, I have to be antagonized as a person. My existence is now
It's just so
Fucking stupid. Like, fuck you.
That's your business. It's not mine. That can be very, like, I found the fact that I have to do that is very clarifying and actually has helped me to be more consistent and steady in my own mind, heart, as a content creator. I have a separate part of my life where I'm a political person, with fun, and I express myself there. Well, there are healthy ways where we have to say, I'm an individual and I resist collective pressure against the world. But there are also realities that, like we'll just say,
So laggy. Why is it so laggy?
with certain portions of my family, and I know very well what their values are, and may differ in some ways. I don't have a hard time in certain places in my life conforming because I know that it's going to be better than sinking my heels in. I feel like this is an opposition that may not think deliberate, be as discerning about, is it a time to dig my heels in? Is it a time to conform? Is
What
it
is
black and
this? Like,
white? Can
no,
there be a level
no.
of healthy compromise? Like, it's gonna be so
Fuck this stupid fucking.
especially with Uranus at 0 Gemini. Venus is squaring Mars and Mercury, those signs. Mercury's retrograde. It'd be easy to sort of lose our heads and become confrontational.
Yes, 100%. And I see that especially emphasized in that
Like
Venus
what?
square Mars.
So
And just for
stupid.
this information, Mars conjoined the South Node, right? And so even just the symbolism in that, and what we're speaking to with your experiences of, you know, when, just like when to talk politics and when to not, like when to let it go. There is something to this lunation about letting it go, having like making a choice to a decision that leaves us letting go.
Gosh, it's also unfortunately kind of just reminding me of like that process. I feel like there's something very sacred feminine about this process of like having a friend who's in an unhealthy relationship dynamic, and you have to know you can't overtly kind of criticize this thing. You can't overtly talk about it because then it goes underground. So it's like you have to learn how to like subvert the part of you that wants to say the truth, which is like, this is toxic, you deserve better, this is crazy, like get out of here. And like learn to walk this fine line. And it's interesting because it's a fixed sign, but there's some mutability piece to it too that I think that square is speaking to, that you mentioned, Whitney. But it's like learning how to walk. It's almost like the Aquarian way, right? It's like it's fixed, but there's a binary. There are two things you can believe at the same time, but they're both totally.
Like, come on, like shoot the gun.
So yeah.
Very end of the month on the 31st, we'll wrap up with this. We get the
Like, who was shooting me? Did I not pass them away?
At the same time that we get a first quarter
What?
moon in Scorpio, by the way. That first quarter moon in Scorpio, to me, one of the things that makes this interesting would be that if there is something about speaking truth and sort of staying true to ourselves on some level, if that's what this is about. This is a time I could see where carrying over from the intensity of the new moon, this could be some kind of first meaningful testing, like a stress test of that decision to dig your heels in. Like if there's something that requires, no, this is me, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm thinking, and I'm resisting some collective pressure, I would anticipate that this could be a moment of almost like a stress test to that authenticity.
Right, and doesn't it kind of tie into the themes of what we were just talking about with our moon, right? Like, if we have these questions of power, then this moment, this Mercury Cazimi feels like the perfect opportunity to mine insight, to mine gold into how best to use this leadership or possibly bravery on a personal level that we've been questioning or wrestling with over the moon period.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think there's something I failed, and it just occurred to me. I know that I failed to explain this in February when we talked about our lunar links, but this Cazimi that's happening at 9 Leo is the site of the second total solar eclipse in Leo in August 2027. So that's kind of significant, and just something to kind of like think about. And that's kind of where I was going in that. And I'm also just thinking about, I was truly tangentializing the Sun-Pluto opposition and how that's when we started recording together, you guys. And after we were talking about it at the end, so.
The nostalgia.
Yeah. We got to cancel people in a room together. We're going to be a little bit nostalgic. But anyways.
I have to say, it will be this Thursday and the first on Friday with the new monthly overview and horoscopes happening.
Yep.
So Mercury Cazimi feels like a good day to introduce some new people and also kind of bridge.
What? Like, come on, man. Like, no.
Some bonus content, maybe even that weekend.
Totally. And I feel like people, when we have
Whining
months like
does
this,
not
we have
change
so many
RNG.
good docile things that we talk about.
I might have some
and then
lunch,
we talk about
honestly.
those pockets of activity, like is happening at the end of the month. It definitely looks more reactionary. it's easy to just hear that part of what was said and not hear the rest of what was said in the whole month of the show. But what's coming up in the rest of 2025, there's some really beautiful astrology, like Venus is moving into conjoining Jupiter and Cancer, we get air trines, we get water trines, like it's going to be really beautiful. So don't forget, because we're recording this, where in that early month period we talked about touching grass and coming back to ourselves, like don't forget that.
Oh my god.
I love that. Yeah, super solid advice.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a plate of lunch. I'll be back.
It's, you know,
I'm gonna
2025
play some more after, I
is
think.
so far delivering on its promise to be an era-shifting year, mid-decade. So I just, and it's been a real privilege to unpack a lot of this with the two of you. I want to show you, as always, how you can get
And they did a study at University of New Mexico.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Drink by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day.
These are some of my all-time favorites. I just have to tell you, I was so excited to have you guys in today. I really was. All weekend I was giddy thinking about today. So, congratulations on the Netflix series. I'm super excited to, first of all, to have that on a mainstream platform is such a huge victory for you. So, congratulations. It's all turning in both of your way. I mean, there was so much skepticism just years ago, but now it seems like with, and even Michael Shermer, you were showing me something that he tweeted today.
Yeah, well, no, he tweeted it a while ago.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, he walked back on some of his criticisms of
It was in light of new evidence of the younger guys.
Exactly. No, it's been a major challenge getting this show done. But it's the first time I think that these radical ideas have gone onto a major platform. And the whole focus of the thing is summed up in the title of the show, Aging Apocalypse, because we had an incredible apocalypse that hit this planet, and it wasn't just one moment. It was 1,200 years of hell between roughly 12,800 and 11,600 years ago. And that is not taken into account by mainstream historians and archaeologists. Something that really changed the world needs to be taken into account if we're claiming to have a full knowledge of the past of humanity. And so I'm just really glad that Netflix is taking this show on and they're going to blast it out to a worldwide audience. And hopefully that will begin to put more pressure on the academics who, frankly, I'm not a conspiracist, but they do act as gatekeepers as to what may be allowed out in front of the public and what may be not allowed.
Yes, and that seems to be because of the books they've written, the lectures they've given, that they've given all these lectures and they've written all these books that have theories that are outdated, and they don't want to let those theories go in light of the new evidence. They want to push back as much as possible because it frankly weakens their credibility as the arbiters of the truth.
Yeah, I think that's the issue. But really some quite sinister things have happened. Because of this show, I got banned from Egypt. That's a very clever way for archaeologists to make sure that no criticism can come in of their sites. is just to, of their take on things, is just to ban from coming there. I got banned from Serpent Mound in Ohio. Can you imagine that? I mean, Serpent Mound is a national landmark. People should not get banned from going.
When you say banned, meaning you try to go to film, or just to visit?
When we approached them to make an episode of my Netflix series at Serpent Mound, initially they were welcoming, and then they heard that Graham Hancock was presenting the series, and immediately they turned around and said, no, filming permission is refused, because Hancock's views differ from our own. Well, I was able to make a virtue of that, in the sense that I stood at the gates of Serpent Mound, which were closed, and I read out their letter, where they say that just because I don't agree with them, they won't allow me access to the site. Fortunately, we have masses of footage, drones, and other things, and we were able to do the show. But it shows again the limited mentality. People must be very insecure in their ideas if they actually have to ban critics from expressing alternative.
And what is the significance of Serpent Mound?
Well, the first and foremost thing is it's an incredible, beautiful, amazing site, which everybody who get to Ohio should go and see. It's just the most incredible place. But secondly, there are indications that it's much older than it's supposed to be, and that has particularly to do with the way that the jaws of the serpent line up to the setting sun, because the changing positions of the sunset due to changes in the Earth.
So this is it here?
That's it there. We're looking at that's the head of the serpent, and it's looking straight at the setting sun. And this alignment was perfect about 12,500 years ago. It's slightly off today, and that's because of changes in the rising point of the sun over thousands and thousands of years. And that's what they don't like. They don't want Serpent Mound to be old. There's one group of archaeologists think it's just 1,000 years old. Another group think, well, maybe it's 2,500 or 3,000 years old. But the notion that it might be 12,000 years old is something they don't want anybody to hear.
And is the evidence that it's 12,000 years old just based with the alignment of the sun, or is there other evidence?
No, there's other evidence as well. There's material from that time that have been found at Serpent Mound that archaeologists consider it to be irrelevant to the date of Serpent Mound.
Yeah, material, like what kind of material?
Carbon dated objects, bits of wood that were burned. People were there, people were doing stuff. It's clear that that site has been constructed and reconstructed multiple times over thousands of years. And this is a theme that I found throughout making ancient maps, that when you look at a particular site, what you're looking at is the latest incarnation of that site. But the site itself has been sacred for millennia, and it needs repair, it needs renovation, particularly if it's an earthen mound like Serpent Mound.
And so that is a theme that does seem to be repeated even under modern accepted archaeological understandings of ancient sites like the Parthenon and the Acropolis.
Well, less so.
Less so in terms of the timeline.
Less so in terms of the timeline. I mean, one of the sites we visited for the series is an incredible pyramid in Mexico at a place called Cholula. It is, in fact, the largest pyramid in the world. Very few people have even heard of it, but it's a much bigger pyramid than the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. It's not as high, but its footprint is massive. So it's a huge, humongous thing sitting there on the ground. And it turns out that inside it are 4 other pyramids that were built on top of what we see and what we see now. What we see now is built on top of those older pyramids. And then at the very heart of it is a sort of sacred spring that seems to have been the reason for the creation of that. And we again explored the possibility that the origins of this may be much older than the archaeological data.
So how long did it take you guys to do this series?
Well, to be clear, the series is me, and it's me making it, but Ravel plays an incredibly important role in this series. Ravel and I are comrades in arms. We're working together against the mainstream to bring an alternative point of view, and Ravel is the star of episode 8. And episode 8 is the episode where we bring the whole story of the ancient apocalypse together. The terrible things that happened to this world, the terrible things. That was the time when all the great megafauna went extinct, the saber-toothed tigers, the woolly rhinos, and so on and so forth. They all went extinct between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago. And there's evidence of just utterly cataclysmic flooding in North America, particularly in the Channel Scablands in the Pacific Northwest. And that flooding came off the ice cap and something made it come off the ice really, really fast. And Randall has just devoted years of his life to studying this mystery of what really went on there. And let's not underestimate it. Let's just not talk about lakes resting their backs. Let's talk about something huge that took place, and the landscape speaks to that huge.
And Randall, you've discussed this in the podcast before, but in the interest of making this a standalone show, we should probably get into it before. You came up with this idea. At what year was it when that idea first came to your mind? Remember you were telling me you were on acid, you were looking at how
that was 1969.
Yeah.
And I didn't quite formulate a specific theory at that point.
What you had thought?
I had an impression. I call it an impression. I was looking at an underfit river. You know what that is?
No.
JD, can we do a map? And I'm going to show you exactly what we're talking about. I'm going to zoom in. Okay,
oh, there you go. Nice. A little HDMI action. Okay.
All right, you're going to learn a new term, Joe. It's underfit river. Okay, so it was a little different back in 1969. But Eden Prairie was a location of an area. This rain. All right, here we go. And here we go. So this is the Minnesota River. And I was standing. I actually went back and found a few years ago, found a spot and I was standing. And it was right here on this bluff, looking into this valley. Here you can see there's another side to it over here. And if you look back here, you're going to see this is what's an underfit river. An underfit river is where the modern river is diminutive relative to the channel that it's flowing. And the channel was part of what they call the spillway of Lake Gygesz, which was a gigantic meltwater lake that formed in that interval that Greg was just talking about. So this is the modern Minnesota River, which is a fairly substantial river, probably close to the Colorado here that runs through Austin. But you can see the channel. The channel is huge relative to the river. A few geologists worked on it and concluded that the meltwater flow through here was 4,000 times greater than the modern flow of the Minnesota River. So anyways, I was standing here looking out into this, and what I saw was the modern river entrenched within a couple of banks, and then I'm looking at this huge channel, and I just had this impression that, was this a huge river channel? You know how, because see when I was looking 3 miles across, there's another set of 200-foot high bluffs matching the ones that I was standing on. And then below me was the modern Minnesota River with its banks, which were like miniature versions of the bluffs. Now it was a full decade before I actually came back to the idea as I was beginning to learn more about catastrophism, which was still very much in the seminal stages back in the, say, the 70s. You know, we've learned so much more about the catastrophic history of this planet since then. But then I began to think, well, and this is before I even knew about Glacial River Warren, it was called, which was the flow through here. And we can actually, I took it, we went there. We chased it. We did, right up here by Ortonville is Big Stone, see Big Stone City? So this is the southern outlet of Lake Gygesz. And this was one of the outburst floods, many outburst floods and gigantic flows of meltwater coming off the ice sheet. Big Stone City, you know, when you look at names of lakes and towns and places, oftentimes there's clues, like Big Stone City and Big Stone Lake. If you go there, there's big stones laying all over the landscape that were flushed out in this catastrophic draining of Lake Gygesz.
Because these drainings would involve not just water, but icebergs.
Yes.
Turbulent flows of water filled with icebergs the size of oil tankers. And inside those icebergs, locked up, are huge chunks of rock. and eventually the iceberg melts and it releases the rock, and that's how you get the big snow.
Yeah. And then the last place we went, Graham, was the potholes at St. Croix Falls. I'll zoom in here, and this is an interesting place. There's a constriction in the bedrock. This is hard basalt bedrock. When you have water flow coming along, it's got a conservation of volume, so that if you have a narrow part of the channel, the water coming in as it's going into that constricted channel speeds up, because if you measure the water flow at any 2 points along the channel, it's going to be the same, whether it's a wide channel with shallower water moving slower or a narrow channel with deeper water moving faster. The discharge through that channel is going to be the same. But what happens is if it comes into a constriction, it has to speed up. When it speeds up, it becomes more erosive. And that's exactly what happened right here at Taylor's Falls. And right here at Interstate Park is a series of gigantic potholes. Now these potholes are evidence of intense turbulence within swiftly moving deep water. In a minute here, I've got a great shot when Graham and I were there. I was in the bottom of one of these potholes and Graham was peering over the rim. And it's a great shot because you can really get the sense of the scale. I'll hold up here in a second. But if we go, where did this water come from? This water came from right up here. Lake Nipigon. That was the source of this water. And when you go south of Lake Nipigon, the whole landscape is channel scabbard, just like Graham and I were seeing out in Washington. And this is very convincing evidence of really catastrophic conflicts. And I've always thought it interesting, or at least for the last decade or so, that if you look at the elevation of the land here, if you look at the elevation of the land over here, it's the same. But if you go in the middle here, it's 500 to 1,000 feet lower. What happened here, there was a major discharge south out of Lake Nipigon, came down through.
I think we should add that Lake Nipigon was discharging because it was filled up with the water that came out of the Aztec.
Yes, yes.
What is the conventional explanation for these massive bluffs that are very far apart from each other with a relatively small river bed?
Trying as I might, I've never found an explanation. But you can look here at this, and this is pure what you call scabbling, which is the result of major erosional, intense erosion, cutting out. This is a coulee, but
It looks like somebody's just been picking scabs off the skin of the land. That means these water flows rushing through, full with icebergs and whole forests ripped up by their roots naturally. Torn up scabs.
And so it's your assertion that this all came out of the cataclysm. This all came out of the impacts.
Oh yeah,
comet impacts.
James Teller, geologist, has dated these flows 12,800 to 12,900 years ago.
And how has he done that?
Radiocarbon dating primarily by finding if you have a flood that's taking up anything organic, bone, wood, whatever, and you look in those deposits and you sample, and the samples, let's say because it's a flood, what it's going to do is it's going to pick up younger and older material because it's washing away, it's excavating other land, and so what you do is you get enough datable material, and if it keeps coming up at the maximum age as a given age, that's probably when the flood happened, or a minimum, not a maximum. In other words, flood might pick up stuff that's 15,000 years old and 12,000. Well, when did the flood happen? 15,000 or 12,000. So what you do is you look for the youngest datable material, and that should usually give you a pretty good idea of when the flood happened. So James Teller has dated this overflow here, and again, it comes out perfectly consistent with the younger rocks.
I think it's important to add at that point that there's a reason for all of this. And this is a huge controversy in science at the moment. We know that there was enormous flooding 12,800 years ago. The question is what caused it? Why did it happen? And there's a very powerful theory, which is now backed by more than 100 mainstream scientists, that the Earth passed through the debris stream of a disintegrated comet. And that theory is called the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. And those several bits of that disintegrated comet might have been pretty big, maybe up to 1 kilometer in diameter. And they landed on the North American ice cap, generating huge huge amounts of heat, tremendous shock wave hits the ice cap, and it turns that ice into water and rushes down southwards, fills up these lakes, overflows these lakes, and tears up the landscape underneath it. And this younger dry ice impact hypothesis is by far, in my view, the best explanation of what's going on. I'm very happy to say that the Comet Research Group, the 100 scientists who are behind this, they've been funding their own research for nearly 2 decades because no big mainstream institution would get behind them. But just in the last couple of years, some big funding has come into the Comet Research Group, and they're now in a position to go look at Antarctic ice, to go look at all the evidence from all over the world that shows that this cataclysm did happen 12,800 years ago, and that we're dealing with something really that is almost unimaginable in its scope, and which should change the way that we look at the history of the human species if it were not for this resistance. I wonder if we could just show a short clip which has got Randall in it, the Randall clip, which is from the Age of Apocalypse show, and where Randall makes the point at the end of it that once we take this into account, the whole story of history is going to change completely, and that's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for some recognition that something really important is missing.
Ancient structures, built with surprising sophistication.
It's the most amazing archaeostranding site in North America.
Revealing the fingerprints of an advanced prehistoric civilization.
This pillar is like a Rosetta Stone.
The possibility of civilization emerging earlier than we think it gets much stronger.
It's going to absolutely demand of rewrite of history as we know it.
And this is the point. This is why I've made this series, because that idea has to get out there. That we've got to stop being so complacent about how we look at our past. And for the very same reason, we need to stop being so complacent about how we look at our future as well. We live in a hazardous cosmic environment. It just happens that we live at a time in the human story where if we chose to do so, we could actually do something about it.
What motivated you to get involved in this? I know Fingerprints of the Gods released in the 90s. It was
1995.
That's when I first read it and I became obsessed. What motivated you to put that out?
It was a process, really. I used to be a current affairs journalist. I was the East Africa correspondent for The Economist. I had no interest in history whatsoever, but I began to come across things, particularly traveling initially in Ethiopia and then in Egypt, which made me wonder about the past. And, standing in front of the Great Pyramid of Egypt is an awe-inspiring experience, especially when you've never seen it before. And in 1989, when I first saw it, I had never seen it before. 6 million tons, 481 foot high, 13-acre footprint, this massive thing, and archaeologists are saying it's just the tomb of a pharaoh, and yet no pharaoh's body was ever found inside it, or indeed inside any ancient Egyptian pyramid. There had to be another explanation, and I've always been a contrarian. I've always tried to give an opposite point of view. I hate it when there's just a single narrative that says this is the truth and there is no other truth. And so I felt it was important to start giving an alternative point of view, and I started to look into it in depth. Could there be something missing from the story of our past? And that's why I ended up writing Fingerprints of the Gods, to put that information before the public, to allow people access to information that they had not had access to before, and to begin to think for themselves instead of just accepting the word of the so-called experts. The experts know a great deal. I couldn't do anything I do without the work that archaeologists do, but they shouldn't be given a monopoly over the story of the human past. Our past belongs to us, it belongs to all of us. And everybody, whether they're an academic or whether they're a man in the street, they've got something to contribute to the idea of our past.
And the Younger Dryas impact theory, when was that first brought out?
2007. That was when it first brought out. It immediately caught my eye. Because when I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, I proposed that there had been a gigantic global cataclysm about 12,500 years ago, but I didn't really know what had caused it. I suggested a number of possibilities, and then suddenly in 2007, out comes this hypothesis with mainstream backing by mainstream scientists, saying that it looks like there was a series of, not just one impact, but multiple impacts all over the Earth around 12,800 years ago that caused this cataclysm. And I began to follow that theory. And by about 2013, it became clear to me that these scientists were onto something really big. And I dived back into it and ended up writing another couple of books, Magicians of the Gods and America Before, which we talked about at our show back in 2019, just to try to put that information out there. And it's fascinating, really, and very lazy, the way that archaeologists react to an alternative point of view. In my case, they almost never get grips with the material that I put out there in the books. They just say, oh, Hank, he's a pseudoscientist. He's a fraud. He's a liar. They never say why I'm a pseudoscientist, why I'm a fraud, or why I'm a liar. They just throw those words out, and you go to Wikipedia, and that's what you see. And the point about Wikipedia is that's the first place, if somebody hears my name or hears about my ideas, first place they're going to go have a look is Wikipedia. And immediately they're going to get turned off, and you can't edit my Wikipedia page. They've locked it, and it's controlled by a group of academics. So I do find this incredibly irritating, but the only thing to do is to keep on going. And this is why, frankly, Joe, your show has been so important, because you're one of the very few people who's allowed this information to get out to the general public, this contrary information which the mainstream doesn't want to hear. You're a powerful platform that's allowed this information to reach so many more people than it otherwise would have reached, and I'm grateful to you for that.
Well, I'm grateful to you guys. I'm really grateful, because it's such an exciting notion, such an exciting idea, and it makes sense when you look at these incredible structures that we don't really have an explanation for. And when we think about the conventional dating of modern history, modern civilization, they want to put it at around 6,000-ish years ago.
That's right. That's right. And then, you know, that was the view really for decades. That civilization began about 6,000 years ago. And before that, there was no such thing as civilization. And they say that the first big megalithic structures were created by societies that were already agricultural societies. So they were generating surpluses which allowed specialists to have the time to learn how to be architects and engineers and builders. But then suddenly out of the blue, and we've got an episode of this in the series, comes Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which is 11,600 years old. It's 5,000 years old than the supposed oldest megalithic structures. And it's a fucking enormous megalithic structure, probably the biggest megalithic structure on Earth, because so much of it is still underground, although we know what's there because of ground-penetrating radar. Highly sophisticated, 20-ton pillars, beautiful astronomical alignments, buried, deliberately buried by the people who created it. They ran it for about 1,000 years, and then they deliberately buried it. And archaeology is still struggling to explain this. They've now had to say, well, okay, somehow megalithic architecture began thousands of years before we thought it began. How are we going to explain this? And they have to accept, this is the mystery that the archaeologist does show us clearly. When the work began on Göbekli Tepe 11,600 years ago, the entire population there were hunter-gatherers. They were not agriculturists, generating those supposed services that would allow experts in architecture to emerge. They were hunter-gatherers. And how, in God's name, do a group of hunter-gatherers wake up one morning and create something like this? This enormous scale. And then the mystery deepens, because at the same time that they're building the megalithic site, they're also suddenly doing agriculture. And I look at that as a contrary. And I say, I actually don't think that this was something that was just dreamed up overnight by a group of hunter-gatherers. I think I'm looking at a transfer of technology. I think people came to that site who already knew how to do this stuff. And maybe they used that site to mobilize the local population, to push them into a new direction. And that was truly the beginnings of civilization as we know it. But I think it was a restarting of civilization, a reboot, not the actual beginnings. I think there was an earlier lost civilization. And that's the whole point.
What's your perception about that particular thing?
Well, it's incredibly important. It's an incredibly important day because the Younger Dryas begins 12,800 years ago with a cataclysm, with a puzzling, mysterious rise in sea level at the same point. 1,000 years of freezing temperatures, mass extinctions of animal species all over the world, and then 11,600 years ago, global temperature shoots up. The last of the ice caps collapse into the sea level rises enormously. That is the date that work starts at Göbekli Tepe, and that's a point I've made many times, but it's really worth making because archaeologists roll their eyes every time you say the word Atlantis. But that is precisely the Plato, which is the earliest surviving reference to Atlantis. That's precisely the date he gives for the destruction of Atlantis, 11,600 years before our time. He puts it this way, that his ancestor Solon visited Egypt, and we know about that visit. It's historically recorded. That visit to Egypt was in 600 BC, and there Solon claimed to have been told by Egyptian priests about this great advanced civilization that once existed, but that angered the gods and was destroyed in an enormous flood. And Solon asked those Egyptian priests, when did this happen? And they said, 9,000 years ago. Well, do the math. That's in 600 BC. That's 9,000 years before 600 BC. We call that 9,600 BC. That's 11,600 years ago. That's exactly the date of the ending of the Younger Dryas, and it's exactly the date of what is called meltwater pulse 1b, one of the biggest single rises overnight in sea level that ever occurred. So if Plato made it up, it's really weird that he picked a date that is precisely a date that coincides with the latest geological evidence of cataclysmic sea level rise.
Could be a coincidence, but
pretty good one.
I will mention I did a two-parter on all of what Greg just talking about and the geological evidence that confirms or refutes Plato's account, and it's available on my website for download. And it's like 7 hours of detail.
Yeah, you go deep, bro. You go deep.
And you see, the academics have never bothered to do this because they, in their pride and in their arrogance, they just say, we know that Plato is just a fantasy. They don't.
What?
People like my grandma,
Oh my God. Come on, man. Come on.
And
Come on, man.
Plenty of evidence that there were many sites like this that were thought to be just legend and myth, like Troy, for instance.
This stream is not like Benoit, let me tell you. Although the vape, we're gonna do maybe another half hour. Oh, it's 1:30 already. Yeah, we'll do half an hour more.
What better way to ensure that factual information is passed down to the future than to record it in a fantastic story that people would pass on. People love telling stories. And they don't even need to understand what the heart of the story is. As long as it's a great story, they're going to keep on passing it down to the future. So I think myth is very important, and that's something that we do in the Netflix series. We look at the myths. The story of Atlantis is not alone. There are thousands of traditions from all around the world speaking of a global flood that destroyed a former civilization, that brought to an end the golden age.
With all this physical evidence and with all these myths, are there more and more people that are accepting this or exploring this with curiosity and open-mindedness now?
I would say yes, and one of the things that makes me confident that that's happening is because I am getting a lot of emails and communications from people, young people going, you know what, I was watching your stuff, Graham's stuff, I've decided I'm going to go into geology. I mean, I've got dozens, or I'm going to go into paleontology, or archaeoastronomy, or archaeology. So just the fact that I'm getting those kinds of communications from people, every time I get one, that's encouraging to me. Because I think it's the old axiom that, sometimes, in order to evolve past an entrenched theory, the gatekeepers have to pass away and a new generation has to come along who's a little more willing to look outside that dogmatic framing.
And also, if you are a young archaeologist and you're trying to carve your way in the world, what better way than to explore this with tons of evidence? It's very controversial theory that's been dismissed.
It takes courage, though. It takes courage on the part of those archaeologists because they can lose any hope of promotion if they touch ideas like this. Archaeology is a very restricted discipline. If you don't copy what your professor says, if you go off on a tangent, they'll cut you off. There's so many people who've done such great work in archaeology that doesn't fit with the mainstream, and they just get isolated by their colleagues.
I'm hopeful, I really am. And one of the things that gives me hope is Brian Murarescu's, the reception of his material. That book, The Immortality Key, which is fantastic, which points to real...
Which I wrote the forward to.
Yes, and you did that podcast with us remotely. When we did that, and he expressed all this information, we talked about these ancient clay vessels that show clear evidence of some sort of psychedelic that was mixed in with wine that was probably the origins of a lot of even democracy, like the Enlightenment. A lot of it came from these meetings, and people came from all over the world to participate in these rituals. This is now being widely accepted, and it's a field of study of art.
And let's think about it. If you're locked, this is one of the reasons why psychedelics are being so successful in healing people with profound depression. Because what is profound depression? Otherwise, that we're locked in a very narrow frame that you just can't escape from. And what psychedelics seem to do is they break that, and they allow a kind of openness to come in, and new thoughts to come in. So it's not surprising that psychedelics revolutionized the ancient world. And I'm absolutely convinced that there isn't a religion in the world. This is what a lot of people. But there isn't a religion in the world that didn't begin with experiences in altered states of consciousness. So when we talk about a lost civilization, I believe that was a civilization that grew out of shamanism, and for which altered states of consciousness were fundamental. We've been taught to despise altered states of consciousness in our society today. We're supposed to just be alert problem solvers and not doing anything else. But it's out of altered states of consciousness that the real creativity comes, and that changes in mindset come up. People can break free from previous restrictions and move in new directions.
I have mentioned to you a friend of mine, Ben Johnson. He's a former Navy SEAL, 11 years as a Navy SEAL, suffering from PTSD.
Alright, 30 more minutes. Doesn't even make sense. Scary Joe Bogie, but it wasn't before.
A lot of his brothers in arms also would have the same issues with PTSD. Discovered that psilocybin mushrooms were a very effective treatment for it. So he began looking into, he became a grower, and he's perfected, and over like 11 or 12 years, he's perfected the growing technique. And he's now been granted the first federal license to legally grow psilocybin. And they're building a laboratory in Georgia, and it'll probably be where we eventually get
Come on, man.
About what's got going on.
Definitely relentless.
If you ever think about going on Joe's show and see, talk about what we're doing, he said, I'd love to. Very interesting, but yeah, 11 years as a Navy SEAL, and he saw it, and mushrooms is what saved us. And now he's building a laboratory. He's got funding. He's building a multi-million-dollar laboratory in North Georgia. I've seen this operation. It's mind-blowingly impressive what this guy did.
Well, that connects us with Dennis McKenna and Terrence McKenna's human beings literally evolving from lower hominids experimenting with psilocybin mushrooms.
It's a very powerful idea, and kudos to Terrence McKenna. And I never knew Terrence personally, but I do know Dennis very, very well. He's a fantastic researcher in this field. Kudos to them for realizing. Terrence's book was called Food of the Gods. That encounters with psychedelics, with ancient psychedelics, were what put humanity on a huge leap forward. And then, unfortunately, we have repressive forces in society that have tried to shut that down and demonize. We are missing a very, very important part of our heritage with the attitude that we have to psychedelics right now. And that's
This is the run, boys and girls.
To see that the mainstream research is finally getting involved in this.
No.
Realizing that these are real healing products that they can do things that no other big pharma medicine can do. My only concern is that big pharma takes it over, and that they start putting in, synthetic psilocybin and patenting it in various ways. This is again, it's like our past. This is a governments should not to tell adults what they may or may not put in their models. Governments should not hold the keys to our consciousness. These should be matters of personal decision. And for the same reason, looking into the issue of lost civilization, we should not look for ourselves anymore. We should not look for 21st century civilization with all its particular kinds of tech and all its attitudes. We should be open to something very different, which was nevertheless capable of doing extraordinary things.
Is there any evidence that the ancient Egyptians utilized psychedelics?
Definitely. The ancient Egyptians definitely used psychedelics. There are works about their psychedelic of choice was the blue water, which was tinctured in wine. And models of this were found in the tomb of Tutankhamun, as a matter of fact. And apparently, I've not experienced blue water myself, but apparently it induces a deeply altered state of consciousness and opens up visions and possibilities. We shouldn't despise these things.
Do we know what the psychedelic compound in the blue water is?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is. It's all I know is that it induces a dreamlike visionary state.
So we know for a fact that they utilize this based on...
Yes, we do. Based on those models that were found in Tutankhamun's tomb.
There's blue water lilies hold the key to stunning different
What?
Besides being stunning and beautiful, the blue water lily has some surprising medicinal qualities, ranging from being an aphrodisiac to alleviating pain, depression, and even upset stomachs. The blue water lily also has a dark underbelly. It's got a dark underbelly. It's got psychedelic properties that can catapult you into a super high. Also called...
That's the propaganda.
Yeah. The blue lotus, the blue water lily, is believed to have originated in Egypt's Nile River and was used by ancient Egyptians as a sacred substance to attain higher levels of consciousness. In fact, it's common to find symbols representing the blue lotus in Egyptian pillars and scrolls.
And that's a fact. It's all over ancient Egyptian art. And the Egyptologists will tell you that they're holding those just to sniff the perfume. No, they're not. They're venerating them for their effects on consciousness. And to which we should add that the ancient Egyptian tree of life was an acacia tree. And its bark contains dimethyltryptamine, the most powerful hallucinogen known to man. I don't like the word hallucinogen, but entheogen, whatever you want to say, the most powerful known to science. And again, fortunately, there is now very interesting research going on into these things. So there are so many forbidden areas of things which have been forbidden by the experts, by the so-called authorities, which gradually, in the new mindset of the 21st century, we are breaking through to. I think what's special by goodness, it's a time of turbulence and a time of difficulty. We are living through a paradigm shift. And that paradigm shift has to do with our attitude to so-called experts. Yes, there is a place for experts. Of course there is. But they shouldn't be given sole control over any area of the human story. And what's happening now is that people distrust experts, and they rightly and properly distrust experts, because again and again the experts have misled us. And this is true with psychedelics, and it's true with the study of the ancient past of the human species as well. It's absurd that a small group of academics called archaeologists should literally hold the keys to the whole human past and tell us, lecture us, instruct us on how human beings were in the past. There's so much more room for deep exploration in this, and for people who aren't academically qualified to roll their sleeves up and get some work done. And rather, there's a prime example of that. A man who doesn't come from the field, the background of geology or archaeology, but you've rolled up your sleeves, you've walked the walk, and you've got up there and you've brought new information to the table, and that's one of the things I'd like to say, that everybody can do this. This is our past, our heritage. It should not be controlled by any specialist group.
We had dinner together in London, and we were speaking about research that's being done on dimethyltryptamine.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Well, that's happening at Imperial College, and I recently attended an event just a few weeks ago with several volunteers in that project. And what's happening is they are legally being given DMT at Imperial College, which is one of the leading research institutes in the UK. And for the first time ever, they're not looking is going to have entity encounters. They're going to meet entities who may sometimes look very weird. They may be part animal, part human in form. They may be almost formless, but yet they speak to you, they communicate with you. And of course, the mainstream attitude, this is just rubbish, this is just your brain on drugs. Well, Imperial College, they're now testing that view. And what they're finding is that these and something else. DMT, as I'm sure you know, John, is a very short-acting experience when you smoke it. It's about 12 minutes, maybe less. You're in there, you're plunged into a completely convincing, sometimes terrifying, parallel reality. It's so confusing, you hardly know what's going on, and then you're out again. But you come out with a feeling that something's been downloaded. In Imperial College, they found a way to keep people in the peak state of DMT for an hour. They're delivering it through drip, through timed release, and they're keeping the volunteers in an hour in that state. So they have time to find their way around the DMT realm that they find themselves in. And the astonishing thing is that these volunteers, both men and women, are all coming back with accounts of meeting the same entities and the same world. And it has to raise the question, and I know Rick Strassman has been on your show, and kudos to Rick Strassman because he was really the first scientist to work with DMT and human volunteers at the University of New Mexico. Rick Strassman is open to the idea that what happens with DMT is that it alters the receiver wavelength of the brain, and that it allows us to gain access to other realities, that these encounters are not unreal, that they're real on a level that we can't experience in a day-to-day state of consciousness. We have to be in an altered state of consciousness in order to experience them. And ultimately, the aim of this project is to map the DMT world. You know, we talk a lot about extraterrestrials and ETs and making contact, and I'm sure the universe is filled with life, and it would be a very good thing to have the tech to make contact, but perhaps not a good thing, with all those other life forms in the universe. But right there in the DMT experience, inside our own heads, we have the opportunity to encounter another world.
Yo, what's up, Cord?
Another realm. Entities who are very different from ourselves and who have teachings to give us. And I think we should be spending a lot more research funds on exploring those experiences.
Welcome, Cord. How are you?
Finding out what's going on.
What the fuck?
Rather than zooming off to other paths.
What's up, brother?
Let's do both, but let's make sure that we understand that consciousness.
I'm good. That's good, bro. Welcome.
And at the level of consciousness, DMT opens up literally a parallel world. And there's a nexus here with quantum physics, and with the notion of parallel realms and parallel realities. Maybe we can actually access them. Well, the work of Imperial College ultimately is going to come up with some answers on that.
And so much more cost effective.
So much more cost effective.
Traveling to other galaxies.
Yeah. I mean, let's do that first. Let's understand what we are. Let's understand what our consciousness is. Let's not just keep locked in this, we're here to produce, we're here to consume, we're here to buy cars. Sure, those are all part of our life today, but it's not all of us. We're much more mysterious, much deeper creatures than that. And psychedelics offer a door into another way of exploring human consciousness. And when we do that, we find that there are
You play GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, Cord? I'll be honest, I saw you in other people's chats. I know you play Perfect Dark. That's sick. Welcome. Well, Speedy, that's sick. I was playing challenges yesterday. I'm trying to convince the side league, nice, yeah, I'm trying to convince the side league to add the challenges 1 through 30. It makes it really interesting because of the RNG aspect. The RNG spawn, right? And you can do co-op, you can even do 4-player challenges. It's crazy.
I look back in 2005 supernatural meetings with the ancient teachers of mankind, and it is astonishing.
Yeah, 30. Some are really lame, some are like slow motion. Some are way too simple too, like the sims are like meat sims, like the first 4 or whatever. They're pretty terrible. No way, dude, they're so good, man. There's dark sims. A few of them have dark sims. They're amazing, man. They're so good.
In each generation, each civilization,
it's in... Yo, Treehouse guys, what's up, brother?
So they call them fairies and elves in the Middle East.
Aren't they how the duel is unlocked or something?
But if
Oh,
we're
really?
going to
I don't know,
crack this
maybe.
problem, and it is a problem, and it is a mystery, I'm not dismissing it, it's a very important mystery. If we're going to crack it, we're going to have to use psychedelics to...
I don't have Challenge 30 beaten. Challenge 30 is pistols only, King of the Hill, and I think it's against 2 hard sims.
From the general public, people are much more open.
And you have an easy sim, or you have a meat sim on your team. Unless you have a co-op. Not too much. Have a baby this week. Wow, congratulations. That's sick. That's amazing. That's huge. Congratulations, that's massive. Hey, congratulations, that's sick. In a good way. Congratulations, this is amazing. Let's pray for you. I don't know either. My card came with a save file.
Of just accepting what the experts tell us. Oh, the scientists said this, so it must be true.
Yeah, Christ, thanks, man. Sorry, it's been good. It's been good. I'm going back to teach English, or to teach in China in a couple weeks.
Explore the psychedelic experience in a responsible way. Psychedelics are very serious business.
So I'm excited about that.
Very, very serious business. I would not encourage children to take psychedelics.
I'm going to be teaching high school biology for 2 years in Changsha.
I think it's something for the mature mind, but I regard it as a fundamental human right of adults to be able to explore our own consciousness so long as we do no harm to others. And I see this attitude spreading much more widely in society. What the hell is that guy in the suit? What right is he got to tell me how I treat my own health or how I treat my own consciousness? So long as I do no harm to others, that is entirely my business and nobody else's.
Agreed.
Oh, I understand Toady now.
This is the source of civilization, or one of the reasons why people were able to think so creatively and create these incredible structures thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. This all does coincide with this work about these apocalyptic scenarios that you guys are talking
Yeah, man. I'm turning 40. I'm turning 40 in August. Turning 40 in August. It's a big, big year. I'm going to be in China for my 40th birthday. But the emphasis is that I'm going to not be unemployed for my 40th birthday. That's kind of the emphasis.
The comet research group makes that. The comet that disintegrated, that caused so much damage on Earth 12,800 years ago, its debris stream is still in orbit. The Earth passes through it twice a year. And in the next 30 years, we're going to be passing through a very lumpy bit of this 30 million debris stream. It's called the Tauride meteor stream. We should be paying much more attention to that.
I don't know. I'm not going to plan to have a skateboard in Changsha. I mean, I might just for fun, but not to get to work. I'm too old for that, man.
Let's work together as a human species to make life on this planet better for everyone. That's what's going on.
I think I'll definitely bring my trucks and wheels again like last time.
Which is coming into force. And I celebrate the youth of our society today because they are refusing to be bound by the orders that are given to them by the powers that be. There's a new spirit of thinking for ourselves, and that new spirit is, in my view, going to change everything. It seems like a dark time. A lot of stuff is going on. That's always the case when you're in the middle of a paradigm shift. It seems like a dark time, but we're...
Congrats, Trinity Christ, that's sick.
Because 200-300 years from now, this time is going to be looked back on as a turning point in the story.
We might mention that. Speaking of Corb,
Cool, Corb. Yeah, Perfect Dark's amazing. The challenges are so good. Because there's people in the elite that have never faced a dark sim, which is crazy. That's crazy to me. That they've never played against a dark sim, right? I must have, I don't know, at least like 50 hours versus dark sims. At least. Probably more like 100, honestly. Never played Perfect Dark? Yeah, that's true.
A search for near-Earth asteroids, but really they're not paying any attention to the Tauride meteor stream. We know that there's most 200 objects from the
Not most, but
that are a kilometer or
that's
more
not that's not actually.
Comet
I mean,
entry,
maybe.
which is at the heart of the street.
How many users? I think there's 676 GoldenEye users, and there's
These are all fragments of that original
400,
giant
500 Perfect Dark.
began to disintegrate 12,800 years ago that the Earth ran into.
So is this, would you show me channel?
Wow.
Video on Twitter toward media stream.
I don't think I've ever 100%ed it.
That's exactly what happens. We're in that time period now. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
most of those
The multiplayer is so good. It's amazing. It's the best.
maybe the size of a fist. Maybe
The
just
combat
size of a
sim.
fingertip. Maybe just a speck of dust burning up.
Yeah, Tree Antichrist. I was saying I want to get the challenges
Very large objects that are
list rankings for the side leagues. I think that'd be good.
and we should be paying attention.
And for meets too, you can have 4-player challenges, and the RNG of the spawn points makes it infinitely addictive, right?
And they changed everything. Changed it.
And that is what this Netflix is.
That's what Ancient Apocalypse is all about. It's why it's
Channel or Challenge 18, Elvis and Maya sim in the villa.
possibility of a lost civilization and presenting the evidence for a lost
Yeah,
civilization. But
that's awesome.
when you talk
Great Gaming Girl streams.
how did it become lost? What happened that took it away, that obliterated it from human memory? And this apocalyptic episode called The Younger Dryas is the answer to that.
Yeah, it's amazing watching someone play Perfect Dark for the first time.
Again and again is how different the world was during the Ice Age.
I mean, she is a GoldenEye speedrunner.
It was a fertile place. Nobody's doing much archaeology in the Sahara Desert today. The Amazon rainforest, 5 million plus square kilometers under deep canopy. Hardly any archaeology is being done there, and yet we know from LiDAR surveys that there are enormous structures under that canopy. And then what about sea level rise? 400 feet sea level rise at the end of the Ice Age. The prime real estate on Earth, 27 million square kilometers. It's about 10 million square miles. Were submerged by rising sea levels at the end of the Ice Age. And again, archaeology, there is marine archaeology, but they're not really looking very closely. I wonder, Jamie, would it be possible to pull up the guide?
Is this from Japan?
No, this was actually from Bimini.
She would have been cooked on Secret Agent, dude. Yeah, but Secret Agent would have been absolutely destroyed, man. Even Secret Agent is so hard, man. I guess people telling her, were people literally telling her what to do, like in investigation? I hope not. That'd be so lame. No, I'm not hating on anyone. I'm just saying. Investigation took me like forever, man. No. No way. What? No way. I guess she's asking for that then. Perfect Agent. Oh my god.
The Bimini Road.
Yeah.
It's not even very deep.
Dude, it's really hard.
20 feet deep. It was one of the last things to be covered by Ice Age sea level rise, and that's where we show
Villa Secret Agent's amazing.
above water.
Villa Secret Agent is a spectacular level. I do love that level. You use the CMP to get the snipers. It's sick.
When you dive on it, and I've dived on it multiple times, and I went back to dive on it to dive on it again in this series, it's impossible to believe that it's entirely work of nature. And I took a marine biologist there who's diving so there's just no way this thing can be explained as a totally natural phenomenon.
Can we see it, Jim? And what is the convention?
Yeah, Carrington. Yeah.
It's just beach road.
Thanks, Randy. That's really nice of you. I appreciate that. Thank you. That's cool. You too. Thanks for sharing your blessed news. And congrats, and thanks for stopping by, man. This run is Let's get this. Let's get it. Thanks, dude. Yeah. So that's why I'm off work on like a Monday because I'm not working because I'll be starting teaching job in August in Changsha, China. Thanks, brother.
But that's the those are just. That's right. These uniform stones occur naturally. Yeah. How long is this? About 1,000 feet in length, and it's not just a straight line; it's a J-shaped curve as well. And we know that it's been underwater for about 6,000 or 7,000 years. But the question is, how long before that was it made? How long did it stand there above water? We're very prominent on this ancient island that we never fully recognize. And one of the mysteries of it is that on an ancient famous really recent drawn by Gygesz, that grandfather banks as an above water island is shown. It is featured on the Piri Reis map. And what do you see running down? An image of the Bimini River above water. Now, how could the Piri Reis, who drew his map in 1513, have known this? He tells us the answer, that he based his map on 20 older source maps, all of which are Japanese. And he suggests that those maps had come out of the famous library in Alexandria.
Man, getting shot through the console, I just don't have enough health for the end at all, ever.
I believe was mapping the world, was exploring during the Ice Age, and left us ancient maps that show features that only existed during the Ice Age.
Oh, that is
No, this is clearly. So down, it's on its side at the moment. But down there in the lower left, if you bring the cursor down, that big island down there in the lower left, that island is exactly where the Grand Bahama Banks were. An above water version of the Grand Bahama Bank during the Ice Age, and that feature running down the middle of it looks very like the Bimini River to me. So again, it suggests not only do we have a cataclysmic event that changes the face of the earth, but also we have evidence that somebody, as yet unrecognized, had the capacity to explore.
I think it might reduce lag.
During the last Ice Age. One of the things I find most
I've seen Goose do that.
Until 1820, and yet it's on maps born in the 1500s.
But I think it just reduces lag, especially on this level, which is super laggy.
That have now been lost to us. The astonishing thing is that the so-called Pinkerton world map, I don't know if you can find it, Jeremy, drawn I think in 1813 or 1818, based on the latest
I think, I mean, for me, I think it does.
It is, yeah, that one. Keep going right. That one. That one you've got up at the top there. It just shows a hole where Antarctica is. Because it was an honest map. Nobody found it by then. But if you go back to, for example, the Waltzing-Willow world map drawn in 1530 or thereabouts, you find Antarctica is present. If you can find
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, you know what's really interesting? You know what's really interesting is I think Irie starts. I might be wrong. I can't remember. I'm sorry. He starts either widescreen or 16:9, which is crazy because it's really hard to get the headshot because it looks so much farther away because it's so much smaller. That's why I play full screen. For the start, for the headshots. It's like that's why I play Bunker 1 Secret Agent full screen. Because the cameras, like, they look closer, they look bigger.
Is it doing on the map drawn in the 1500s, which we know was based on older source maps when nobody knew it existed in the 1500s?
But it's really laggy.
The obvious answer is we are dealing with the fingerprints of the lost civilization. The map.
So, I mean, ideal, the dream would be to start 16:9 and play 16:9 for forever, but the start is just so shit.
Trying to mix exploration data from their own period with data from the older maps.
I've theorized running the first room in 16:9, right? I'm sure everyone has and everyone's tried, but if you were to start 16:9,
Sophisticated civilization.
or cinema rather, that's what I mean. Sorry, not 6x9 cinema.
See the t-shirt I wear? Stuff just keeps getting...
Yo, what's a Moonraker?
This is my motto. My kids gave this to me for one of my birthdays.
Sorry, whatever cinema I mean. My apologies.
I'm getting older. I'm 72 now. It's partly a
Bag of milk.
myself, but it's partly a comment
Moonraker, how are you?
something else as well. Is that as science progresses...
Again, I removed everyone's mods badges. Don't take anything personally.
25, 30 years, you'll find people telling you that
I'm the only mod now.
exist until 50,000 years ago.
So technically you could say chat has no mods.
196,000 years ago.
That's actually completely accurate. My chat no longer has any mods.
Humans just like us, with the same brains,
Yeah,
the same capacities,
you were.
the same abilities.
I think so. I'm pretty sure.
Once you start extending
I'm
that
quite
time
certain.
back,
Because you would make... Oh, that's another thing. You can't make bets and you can't pin messages anymore. I'm sorry.
50,000 years to do it.
Sorry,
Doesn't
I
leave
really
you
am.
much space. But if you've got 300,000 years to play with, there's plenty of space. So the bottom line, I think this was a civilization that flourished during the Ice Age, that occupied the prime real estate during the Ice Age, along
That's so,
coastlines,
yeah.
was obliterated almost completely in the cataclysm of the Younger Dryas. There were survivors. Those survivors left their fingerprints in places like Göbekli Tepe. After the Younger Dryas was over, they then sought to initiate hunter-gatherers.
Oh, everyone's here today. Thank you, guys and girls. I'm going to play basketball pretty soon, though. Outside in the sun, enjoy the day a little bit.
Ancient Egypt. How far back do you think that was?
Oh, I think the Nile goes back very,
Moonraker, it's like 5 a.m. there,
The
right?
Nile River system 12,500 years ago looked much the same as it does today. Actually, Africa
4
suffered
a.m.?
much less from sea level rise than many other continents. The place that was most dramatically affected by sea level rise was around Indonesia and Malaysia. Geologists call it the Sunda Shelf. And again, it shows up on ancient maps.
Wow, 3:33 a.m. crazy.
Not as it looks today. There was a continent-sized landmass that went underwater there. If your continental shelves are very shallow, they're very limited and very deep,
With
then
the
you don't lose a
forced
lot of
stuck
land. If it's
Corb,
slow and gradual, you lose a great deal of
like
land.
90%.
The Nile River system was pretty much 12,500 years ago the way that it is today.
Well, when he's in the mainframe, depends. Usually about 90%, maybe less. But getting the natural stuck is not very consistent. I'm just mixing it up. I could try the... I was trying a bit.
Time there was water like that in the Nile Valley was when
The last time you had the water
um,
erosion like that in the Nile Valley was precisely during the Younger Dryas.
the speedrunner Pogo Pope's
Extremely heavy rains.
video explanation for the natural stuck.
Heavy rains that is the enigma on the Great Sphinx. We're not saying that there was a flood came over the Great Sphinx. What Robert Schoch is saying, and what his evidence clearly demonstrates, is that we're looking at what's called precipitation-induced weather.
Which is 11 bullets in left strafe entering the dark room.
And Dr. Robert Schoch puts that 1,000 years precisely in the Younger Dryas period. That's the last time that rains of that magnitude fell on Egypt, and it's why we cannot sensibly accept the insistence of Egyptologists that the Sphinx is just 4,500 years old. By all means, yes, 2,500 BC, the ancient Egyptians were there, but I believe they found the Sphinx already created and already heavily.
Okay, much lower than 95%. I was tripping, but it's high. It's like maybe 75% or something. If you do it correctly, it's like nearly 100%.
Which was then later cut down into the head of the pharaoh. The geology speaks to the original Sphinx being more than 12.
Which is great.
And that's the funny thing, because
That's why I'm doing it.
when Robert Schoch
Because it's way more consistent in terms of occurring.
John Anthony West, and I know you had him on the show before he passed. John Anthony West was the first person to suggest that there should be a huge question mark over the Sphinx. That the erosion patterns on the Sphinx suggest that it was much older than Egyptologists said. And maybe 12,000 years old. And at that time, the response of Egyptology was, oh, rubbish. The Sphinx can't
Yeah, Corb,
possibly
go
be
for it.
12,000 years old because there's
Do
no
it,
other
man.
megalithic monument
I highly recommend
anywhere
it.
in the world that's anywhere like 12,000 years old. Well, that got
It's a great
blown
level.
out of the water completely discovery of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which isn't even that far from Egypt. Göbekli Tepe, 11,600 years old, a giant megalithic site. My goodness, if you can make Göbekli Tepe, you can make the Sphinx. It adds hugely to the credibility of Robert Schoch's argument, and I want to pay tribute to Robert Schoch, because there's a mainstream academic who's been willing to stick his neck out, despite taking all sorts of slings and arrows from his colleagues. He sticks with the data, and what the data says, regardless of what the doctors say, is that the Sphinx is 12,000 plus years old.
And Jamie, can you pull up some images of that? Because it is really compelling. When you look at the water erosion evidence that is all around the Sphinx, it's really fascinating stuff, even for someone who doesn't know much about erosion. But when you look at his descriptions, his understanding of the various levels of stone, how some of it is harder.
I don't know, bros. I might go back to nade strat, honestly, just to survive a run.
You see it there? Those deep vertical fissures are classic precipitation-induced weathering, classic weathering produced by rainfall pouring over the edge of that. You don't see it so much on the body of the Sphinx for a very specific reason, that the body of the Sphinx has been repeatedly restored. Some of those blocks that we're looking at there were actually put in place during the Old Kingdom, when the Sphinx is supposed to have been made from new. What were they doing restoring the Sphinx 4,500 years ago if they just built it? You know, logic needs to be applied to this whole process, and we need to free ourselves from the dogma of the
Like this guy, man.
So if this was all, if this water erosion began thousands and thousands of years ago, earlier than conventional Egyptologists date this area, how old do you think that actual civilization was? How far back?
I think it could go back 20,000 years before that. I think it was around all that time. And again, this is a point that I think needs to be made. Archaeologists will tell you that the entire population of the Earth were hunter-gatherers during the Ice Age, say 20,000 years ago, peak of the last Ice Age. Everybody was hunter-gatherers, according to archaeologists. But we today live in a world where an advanced civilization, our own, if we dare call ourselves advanced, and in some ways I think we're not advanced at all, coexists with hunter-gatherers. There are hunter-gatherers in the Amazon rainforest. Some of them don't even know we exist. They've been spotted from aerial surveys. Hunter-gatherers in the Namibian desert. The notion that different types of civilization can coexist on the same planet shouldn't be surprising to us.
No.
Because we do it. And that's what I'm suggesting was the case back there. But a civilization very different from ours. We certainly have technology, enough technology to explore the Earth, enough technology to map the Earth, very advanced astronomy, knowledge of obscure astronomical phenomena such as the precession of the equinoxes, such as the obliquity of the ecliptic. I won't go into details, but it's present in ancient knowledge. There's an amazing book, which I may have mentioned to you before, a book called Hamlet's Mill.
What? How was he even hitting
by
me?
two professors of the history of science, Giorgio de Santillana and Hertha von Deschen, back in the 60s.
That was dumb, man.
And what that book is dynamite, because it shows, going back into the oldest myths and traditions of the world, highly advanced astronomical knowledge. And astronomical knowledge that should not have been possessed by hunter-gatherer civilizations. Astronomical knowledge that could only have been accumulated through thousands of years of careful observation and recording of data. That
It's okay. He wasn't stuck anyways.
The most ancient myths of mankind. And in fact, it was that book, Hamlet's
It was moot.
just as much as my first experience in front of the Great Pyramid, that led me to begin asking questions about the narrative of our past. And I think it's healthy that we should have an alternative narrative. And I can't understand why archaeology is so, I have to say, so afraid of alternative narratives. Because if they're not afraid, why do they react in this way as though we're some kind of existential threat? Why do they block me from getting access to sites if they're not afraid? If they're confident in their position, they should be able to maintain it against all opposition, rather than trying to censor other points of view.
Now, the Great Pyramid of Giza is probably the most stunning of all those ancient structures.
Come on, man.
And the stones are immense, and some of them were cut from a quarry that's hundreds of miles away. How do you think they did it?
well, some of them, the granite in the Great Pyramid comes from more than 500 miles to the south. If you look at the famous King's Chamber, its walls and its roof, the ceiling of the King's Chamber are all made with gigantic granite blocks. Stunning detail. Those blocks in the King's Chamber, the roof of the King's Chamber, weigh 70 tons each. Now, Egyptologists will tell you that, oh, they could move heavy blocks because they put them on wet sand, or ocean along wet sand. Well, maybe if you're just at ground level, that would do. If you're 350 feet above the ground, as you are in the King's Chamber, that would do at all. I don't know how they did it. All I know is they did it. I don't think anyone knows how they lifted those circuits, how they did it. I think they were again, realistic. And it was this ancient complex, 12,000 years ago, that wiped out the human beings, almost not entirely because there were some but removed sea level rise created powerful high energy zone. Anything that was existing on those flooded coastlines has just been pounded down.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lot more energetic than that. I mean, imagine your sea level rising 3 or 4 times, at least, faster than we've seen rise in the last century. And within there, juxtaposed are these episodes of very rapid sea. So, you're talking about...
I don't know, I might play another 5-10 minutes. Thanks for being here, but I need to enjoy the day a little bit.
It's going to be utterly obliterated by the time the process is through. And I think that this is one of the things that, the archaeologists and the prehistorians, people are looking at that, have failed to take into account the severity.
We're so close, man. Like, it's ridiculous.
Where are the artifacts? Where's the pottery? Where's the evidence that this civilization existed? And
We're right there.
One, you don't realize the extent of the total remodel of this planetary surface that took place. Because, I mean, we could get into some of the stuff here. I have tons of images where I think we didn't get a chance to pull up a couple of really awesome drone footage here before we're done. But once you begin to wrap your head around it, you go, really? It's like imagine that you drop an atomic bomb on a city and it completely obliterates. And then a short while later, you drop another one on the same place.
Come on, man.
What's going to be left? And then 10,000 years, 20,000 years goes by.
Wow, I didn't get shot. That's crazy.
What are you going to look for? It's going to be just rubble. It
I'm gonna get shot here.
Incorporated just into the geological stratum.
I don't think it's gonna work.
To differentiate, for example, from what's called a conglomerated rock.
It's not gonna work.
We have just a huge jumble of broken rock cemented together. Right now, within there could be all kinds of stuff that is not recognized as being artificial in the sense that humans had anything to do with it. The other thing is when we talk about these ancient technologies, if we're only looking for a mere reflection of ourselves, we can there is evidence that exists now in some modern research barriers to progress. I think we're getting very close to rediscovering some of the things that our ancient ancestors did. And maybe this would be worth so we could dive into this. I don't want to get into that today. Well, I just really get into it. You gotta get into it. Okay, well, we've opened the doors. Okay. That's sacred, Mother. Well, there are people out there now who have been working on trying to rediscover things. And again, I don't want to digress too much.
I don't think it's it. I don't think it's fast enough. I don't think it's fast enough. I knew it. I knew it.
Basically, in secret. In secret. And I've had the privilege of talking to some of these people over the last 6 or 7 years.
Because, so, I've been trying to do the run through the console strat the last few days,
so it can never get suppressed.
and running through the drone. So that was a super safe run. You know what I mean?
Okay, well,
I knew it wasn't it.
there's a laboratory right now
Sucks though.
in the Maldives that's been building prototypes using these technological principles, which are based on implosion rather than explosion. And the inspiration for Tesla's ideas are very much a part. Yes, Tesla's ideas are very much a part of it. So is, I don't know if you ever did the work with
The double duck.
and discovered,
Oh my god, that sucks.
Jamie, could you look up Victor? Oh, I have the table.
Take it back.
Well, no, let me hold something up here and,
I think the key thing is we're looking at technologies that are not the same as ours.
Yes.
And that's partly why archaeologists can't see them, because they're looking for us in the past, and they're not open to the possibility that there are whole other kinds of technology that could be used. I always go back to the ancient Egyptian traditions that speak of priests chanting as these huge blocks were lifted into the air. Were they using some kind of sound effect, some kind of use of sound was able to manipulate matter? We know that sound can manipulate matter, as a matter of fact, but they're lifting these blocks again and again appears in ancient Egyptian traditions. The notion that we could lift huge blocks with sound seems absurd to archaeologists, and yet it's there in the traditions of the Egyptologists. And what Randall's talking about now is people who are working on a whole new path, and maybe that's a rediscovery of the kind of technologies that were used by a lost civilization.
I think that's what's important about what you're saying, is that we have this very limited idea of technology based on what we've experienced. But if you had anatomically similar human beings that lived for thousands and thousands of years,
Stuff just keeps on getting older.
if you think about the amount of progress that we've achieved as modern humans just in the last few hundred years, you go back 400 years to now, it's a stunning amount of achievement. And if you have a completely different path of technology, one that's not utilizing internal combustion engines and cranes and the like that we experience today,
Mechanical advantage, everything that our tech is based on.
something that's insanely advanced, tens of thousands of years of a different path. And that may be what we're doing.
And that may begin to explain these otherwise inexplicable wonders that have survived.
Jamie, there we go. This is the work of Nikola Tesla. And he was, again, this is way too much for us to get in today. That's why we need to devote a whole section to talking about this. But this was the inspiration. You know, his work was suppressed. A lot of his patents were taken, sealed up.
Honestly, it's because everyone else plays on it.
But this is some of the stuff that's now being developed using his ideas, plus some of the others.
Yeah, honestly, it's just because everyone else plays on it, for real. Let's just leave it at that. I don't like the fact that I would rather play on English. I wish everyone would play on English, but it's fine. It is what it is. Just because the auto aim, it makes it a little less precise, you know what I mean? I'd play on English, but I'm not.
If we had an electric razor, plugged it in, turned it on, set it on this table,
Anyways,
it's going to move around.
yeah, the auto aim, it drives me crazy.
That's the beginning of the concept because it's vibrant. Everything vibrates at a frequency.
It's just not the same. It's not the same, man.
You can control things.
It's just not the same. That's all I'm gonna say. It's like apples and oranges. Not the same experience.
Right now, we have been. I was recently contacted and given the go-ahead that I could call. I've been sitting on this for 7 years without talking because they asked me.
But I got a lot of work to do on this cartridge, let me tell you. I have a lot to improve on here.
That's all happened since last summer. So we're not free to talk about it. So that's what I'm saying. I think it's a good idea to give you that. And we can look at it. I'm going to lay this on Graves and he can look at it too because I really want to get Graves everybody's feedback on this.
I mean, would it be fair to say that there's an element of a rediscovery of all
Yes.
this?
I think it would be fair to say.
Yes.
And so
Oh,
through
no.
somehow, through this technology, they're able to move stones or cut stones or all
Good.
the above, and even transport them.
We can't make Egyptian granite statues today. Yeah, maybe not, dude. Maybe not,
This
brother.
is diagramming all the frequencies of the elements and what their vibrational frequencies are and the numbers that measure those frequencies. And they're all the numbers we get from looking at these ancient traditions that occur over and over and over again. And I've been talking about in my sacred geometry classes for decades without knowing what the final result was going to be. So this inventor was working with this small group, contacted him, and this is what he told me. He said, you built the foundation. He said, you laid the foundation with your work on ancient geometry, and I built a house on top of it. That's what he said. So for 7 years, he's been supplying me with all the information, copies of all the patents, and the videos, the testing of the prototypes, and Mazda, the car manufacturer in Japan, is getting ready to do a $25 million test of some of those prototypes that they believe they can retrofit internal combustion engines with. And there's over 100
Come on, man.
that have developed over 100 patents on some of this stuff. And it's amazing.
And what would be the fuel?
Well, plasmoids. Plasmoids, as it says here, are donut or toroidal-shaped clusters of net protons or net electrons that once captured and placed into a toroidal orbit are capable of absorbing, storing, and releasing enormous amounts of energy within their self-generated and structured electromagnetic containment field. Plasmoids, in fact, function as an atomic battery that can be self-charging due to its ability to convert matter to available heat energy. So it's a lot to get into, and I think it'll take us kind of off what we're here to talk about.
But at least what's promising is that there is some, at least research or understanding.
And it's actually quite mature at this point.
Yeah, really, Corb. Well said.
Kinds of faith that felt
Bros, I think I'm playing another 7 minutes, and then I'm gonna go outside and play some basketball. I might stream the basketball. I need to. I might play some of this. I might play this tonight, but I gotta really rethink things.
immune from government interference, and now I think it's about ready to go to the next.
And what is the motivation to suppress it?
I knew it. I knew it wasn't pace. That one friggin' stings though, man. I'm not gonna lie. I would have been so happy with the 139. Oh my god, but it's not meant to be. It's not meant to be.
Which is ours. And for somebody to come up with a whole new path of technology, very threatening to them, and much better from their point of view to suppress.
Because we're pacing better. We're pacing way better.
And keep things on the track that they're on now. I would say that's.
And maybe for people that are curious about this and maybe even skeptical, consider the massive change that nuclear power provides. Whereas before the 1940s, this was unheard of. This even the concept of it. And all of a sudden, now we have nuclear power, nuclear weapons, the most profound power known to man currently.
God help us, it's a power for use by adults, but unfortunately, it's delinquent children who are leading our world. The leaders of our planet, the politicians out there, they're just complete arseholes. I can't think of any of them who I feel any respect for whatsoever. And it's they who are in charge of this frightening, terrifying technology. We just aren't mature as a civilization to manage technology like that. You have to get that level of...
I'm not disrespecting anyone with Japanese runs. I'm not doing that. It's not what I'm doing.
They're not psychedelic experiences.
Exactly. I've
I
said
don't
it on
mean
your
to.
show, I'll say it again. If I could set the rules, I would absolutely insist that nobody has the right...
I did in the past, and I apologize for that. I'm sorry.
Head of government, unless they've had a dozen experiences with ayahuasca. Let them have those experiences first. Mushrooms will do the job just as well. A dozen major doses of mushrooms will do the job just as well. Lead to that self-examination.
What the fuck is this?
So little in our politicians.
What the fuck is this,
many
man?
of them have actually decided, actually, I don't want to be a politician anymore. And those who did carry on that path will be gentler, kinder, and more open to extraordinary possibilities.
You know, we did have one president. It's pretty lot of evidence that we did, in fact, take several acid trips. You know that? Who's that? John Kennedy. Really? Really? You know, he was having multiple affairs in his life. Okay, so one of his affairs was with a woman who was an associate of Timothy Leary. So that's well established. So the rumor, there's basis to the rumor.
So that's the reason why I'm sure.
Could be, well, it could be that because of, you know, his, you know, because he did really go through pretty much a change of attitude during that last year. But you know what it comes down to is, you know, right now, everything that's going on in the world is basically about the control of energy and resources. And if there was a way, technology, or energy that could do an end run around this idea that we live in a Malthusian reality and we have to have this, you know, fight to the end over who's going to control the energy, who's going to control the resources. It would render our entire foreign policy, our military policy, all of that irrelevant. And from what I've seen about, in my evolving opinion about the possibility of there being ancient technology, that if there was an ancient technology, it should be possible to recover. And what I've seen in the last half a decade or more has initially skeptical, but as I've learned more, you know, gone arduously through patents and things, I've become convinced that, yeah, there is something here. There's something here. That there are people who have been working on these things, and they would like, my role, as they're requested to me, is these guys are academic scientists, inventors. One of them's a geophysicist. A couple of people that I've met recently who are putting money up into this are basically in the energy industry, who have seen the prototypes. I had a meeting in September, or not September, about a month ago, early October, with 4 gentlemen that are putting the money into this, developing this prototype. One of them said to me, well, when I first heard this, I didn't believe this was possible. But he says, I've seen the machines, I've seen the technology work, I'm now convinced. So they've done their initial prototypes, and now they're going to do this major testing. Mazda, automobile manufacturer in Japan, has come on board and said, you can use our laboratories, because of course what they're thinking is that they may be able to get an end run around all the other competition. And one of the things, and when I come back, we can look into this, I've got the videos of testing the prototypes, like taking it. One of the gentlemen that I met with his nephew or son.
So the name change. Well, my friend, in my information section. Well, what's up, Gygesz? How are you? In my information section, it says I'm running a channel called Megalithic China. Subscribe to the channel. That'd be great if you could subscribe to it, my friend. I submit my GoldenEye speedruns there too. So I appreciate it, brother.
This is just the initial prototypes. I can come on your show. We can look at the videos. I can show you all. I'd love to. So they're going to open source all of it within the next few months around the world.
Aw, thanks, man. Thanks, brother. What's up, Gygesz? What's up, man? I'm about to go outside, play some basketball. To be honest, yeah, I filmed Megaliths of China. When I was in China the last, I guess I filmed a lot of hours of footage. I have a Megalithic China playlist. I think it has over like 10 hours of China footage. Yangshan Quarry, Longyu Caves, the pyramids near Xi'an.
but that the younger generation is beginning to break
Thanks, bro.
free in exciting ways. And I would say that archaeology,
Appreciate that.
strangely enough, is a very important part of that system of control. If archaeologists can convince us that
So,
we
yeah.
are the end product of a long, steady
Thought I
evolution
would-
with the apex and the
And then
pinnacle of human achievement,
Megalithic
then it
_China
justifies
is
everything
my
else that goes on
YouTube streams.
in the world right now.
Or sorry, my Twitch streams
Do you think,
Enemy number one, quick in a minute.
please we'll do that, but do you think
is
that they're
this
doing
channel,
this in cahoots, or do you think they're doing this to protect their own personal
which
interests? It seems
is
to
the
align.
underscores for the Twitch, right?
First and foremost,
So my Twitch, that's where all my streams go now.
Personal interests are to express history the same way.
Because Twitch deleted 3,000 hours of my streams for the last 5 years.
I don't think that's happening.
They're just
They actually did it.
human beings.
They're just like everybody
But I
else.
uploaded most of
You
it,
get
like
invested in
95% of it to
particular
YouTube before.
Yes.
It becomes existentially important.
It's your identity.
It's your identity.
And your knowledge defines
You don't have to subscribe to the Megalithic _China one. I'm not trying to grow that one. If you wanted, that'd be awesome for you, right? But
who is attacking you in one way or
yeah,
another.
the
So
other one.
I don't think that it's a
Trying to grow
calculated
it.
conspiracy in that way. But I do think that advantage is being taken of it by other powers, by the powers that be. I mean, I don't want to get into the whole
I just want to share
COVID and vaccine
the footage
issue
and
too
fun
much
stuff.
right now. There's a lot I don't know
Thanks,
about
man.
that, but one thing I do know for sure is that the whole COVID and vaccine issue has been deliberately, carefully used by governments. They've taken advantage of it to inculcate and encourage a habit of obedience in the population, that we just kind of automatically say yes. And that's part of the controlling powers in our society fighting back against this tendency to individuality and to thinking for ourselves. And that's why I say we live in the middle of a paradigm shift, where we're in struggle right now, and either one side or the other is going to win. But I believe that the force of good is a real force, and that the ability to think freely and think independently that the younger generation is showing is going to triumph in the long run.
And what is this enemy number one video? We need to pass the sacred HDMI cable.
Well, again, it's just this. I was initially really perplexed by the way archaeologists responded to it. Why would they hate me so much? Why would they be so angry with me?
Well, you're an outsider.
And yeah, I guess that's it. Simply by proposing a different point of view. So it's just another short clip from Nature to Progress.
This idea is upsetting to the so-called experts, who insist that the only humans who existed during the Ice Age were simple hunter-gatherers.
That automatically makes me enemy number one to archaeologists.
Why don't you say we don't know? This is a spectacular mystery.
Sure, on Netflix. Michael Shermer thrown to the wolves.
Perhaps the extremely defensive, arrogant, and patronizing attitude of mainstream academia is stopping us from considering the possibility and trying to overthrow the paradigm of history. Very, very dramatic. I was lucky to work with a really top-class professional chemical in making this series. And talking about COVID, my goodness. I mean, to make it
Alright, I'm gonna go in maybe a minute. Sorry, thanks everyone for being here, I appreciate it, but I gotta go out and enjoy the day. I'm probably gonna stream me playing basketball, probably.
But we powered through and we got it done. And I hope
Maybe.
the series is going to make a difference. It's going to be part of that, providing an alternative source of information to people who are fed up with being told what to think.
Alright,
by the
he's
so-called experts.
in a minute. Have a light.
Inspiration for people to think differently. Now, the possibility of this technology
It's a nice day outside.
existing, that we were talking about, existing in the past, would this technology be made with metal?
We will be back to play this maybe tonight, maybe not. I might do a weightlifting stream tonight, actually.
We wouldn't find evidence of them today.
I think we should be open-minded to a whole range of possibilities. One of the issues that gets me into a lot of trouble with archaeologists is that I think there are latent human qualities which we are not using. I don't know if you've ever had Rupert Sheldrake.
Yes.
I'm not sure. So Rupert has done a lot of work on telepathy. Real solid science.
Alright, I think I'm done.
Just like, why does your dog know when
I'm
you're
done.
coming home? You know, he did a series of controlled experiments where the owner came home at random different times of day. And the dog always knew when he was coming. Some kind of telepathic message was passed.
I'm not playing, I'm just turning it off.
Sheldrake has shown that telepathy is a real thing. How do we,
Meme factory?
We're thinking there's somebody in the next second the phone rings.
Like a goldfish? Yeah, I feel like a goldfish right
Things
now.
like that, Richard.
All my friends here though.
And shown that it's far beyond chance. That this is a real ability that humans have, but that we're persuaded in our society to think it does not exist.
Go outside.
Everyone go outside, enjoy the day.
That sounds like Stephen King territory, but maybe we can do it.
Thank you for being here, everyone. I appreciate it.
Our society has rested all its faith on leverage and mechanical advantage and a particular part of technology, and we've allowed what I think may be latent human abilities to fall into the abyss and not to be used anymore, so much so that we laugh at ourselves for even thinking of them. And whenever I mention things like telepathy or
Hef
telekinesis,
with him?
I'm not pinning my whole
What does
thesis
hef
on
with it
that.
mean? Hugh
I just think
Hefner?
it's something we should be open to.
What does hef
In
mean?
ancient civilization, we're using those
Hugh
innate
Hefner?
human abilities
Ridiculous.
that we've forgotten how to use today. There would of course be no
I don't know if I'm gonna read anybody. We may not read any, we may not read anyone.
like those 70-ton blocks.
Does anyone think Goldeneye?
350 feet in the air, covering
Drewski?
the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid.
Should we read Drewski? We'll read Steal It Wins Andy.
Perhaps another explanation is needed.
Also so profoundly advanced in terms of their ability to move in immensely huge objects that it makes you consider in a way where we're talking about, look at, even if we use the conventional data.
He's playing Goldeneye. I think it's a he. I don't know who it is. It could be a she. Oh, he's got a camera. Let's go.
How do they do that? Like, what?
I've never seen a satisfactory explanation from the Egyptological fraternity as to how this was done. They keep coming up with multiple theories about how the Great Pyramid was built, and none of them make any sense. I've been lucky enough to climb the Great Pyramid 5 times. I've explored every internal passage. This thing is just a gigantic mystery in scale. It challenges us to think again about everything. In fact, we can incorporate the dimensions of our planet in its key dimensions, that you can take the height of the Great Pyramid and multiply by 43,200 and you get the polar radius of the Earth. You can measure the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid, multiply by the same number, you get the equatorial circumference of the Earth. I won't bore you, but that number is not a random number. Anybody who goes into my books will find that it relates to the obscure astronomical phenomenon of precession of the equinoxes. Great Pyramid is almost perfectly aligned to true north, within 3/60 of a single degree. 13 acre footprint, 6 million tons, 481 feet high, and aligned to true north with this incredible precision. I think they're trying to tell us something. The pyramid speaks